evening and welcome to the Olathe Board of Education March 2018 Board of Education meeting. Jordan, we call the roll.
Mr. Whitcliffe?
Here.
Mr. Shear?
Here.
Mr. Beveridge?
Here.
Mr. McCune?
Here.
Mrs. Martin? Mrs. Felter?
Here.
Mr. Geary?
Here.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you. We have a very nice crowd here this evening. I'd like to welcome all of you here. Before we get started, I would like to make an introduction. We do have with us tonight Janet Waugh. She's with the Kansas State Board of Education. I'd like her to stand and we could recognize her this evening. Thanks for all you do for the state of Kansas and our kids here locally too. We have a lot of awards and recognitions we'd like to share with everybody. I think Mr. Geary is the one.
Isn't it exciting to have a packed house?
Yes, we have a lot.
Yes, it is.
I am thrilled to present our recognitions tonight, and I'd like to welcome all of our distinguished guests. We're going to begin our recognitions tonight with a community partner. I'd like to ask Heather Schoonover from Community Development and Havencroft Principal Aaron Miller to come forward to help with this recognition. Tonight we are recognizing College Church of the Nazarene. With the following from the College Church come forward to be recognized: Pastors Troy Snyder and David Sharp, Bob Drummond, Jan Wessels, Joe Lamar, and Jenny Downs. College Church of the Nazarene has been a long-time Adopt-a-School partner with several Olathe schools and has been a 15-year supporter of the Volunteer Serving Schools program. At Havencroft Elementary, they've raised funds to support laundry facilities for a special needs classroom. They've implemented an after-school homework help program consistently supported by youth mentors. They've engaged the students of Mid-America Nazarene University to also implement Adopt-a-School projects. They've organized the Harvesters Weekend Backpack Program and implemented staff appreciation events. They've also coordinated several events for Central Elementary, and most recently provided the school with a Gaga pit, which I'm not 100% sure I know what that is. And who does? Who knows what a Gaga pit is? It's not just me. All right. And $15,000 in funding to add play equipment to the playground. We thank you so much for your support of the Olathe Public Schools. Give them one more round of applause. Thank you. Next, we'd like to recognize Rod Smith, Principal of Frontier Trail Middle School. Rod, if you could come forward, along with Fine Arts Coordinator Martha Gable. Rod Smith was named Honor Administrator by the Kansas Music Educators Association. This annual award recognizes administrators who've demonstrated continuing leadership in developing, improving, and supporting music education within a wider commitment to its arts education, music, theater, visual arts, and dance. Congratulations. And I know you have quite a group of supporters here tonight. Do you want to introduce your folks here?
I do. Give me just 30 seconds. My wife, a teacher in the district, Brenda Smith, and my son Benton, a senior in Lake South. And then I have Sarah Smithco, my band director. Gretchen Harrison, stand up, Sarah. My choral director. And I think Mr. Cole, there he is. He just looked in. Mr. Cole.
Congratulations, Rod. Next, we'd like to recognize Kristen Ramshaw from Olathe South High School. Kristen, if you could come forward, along with Principal Clint Albers and Assistant Principal and Athletic Director Matt Johnson. Kristen is the Olathe South Gymnastics coach and was named the Sunflower League Gymnastics Coach of the Year. This award was voted on by other head coaches in the Sunflower League. Congratulations to you. And do you have family here tonight as well?
do.
I'd like them to stand and be recognized as well.
My parents, as we call them, the Gramshaws.
That's awesome.
My sister and her entire family, which is a lot of them. And then perhaps one of the most important is all of my gymnasts.
Congratulations, Kristen.
Thank you. I just want to thank all of you guys too for supporting high school gymnastics. That really means a lot to us. So
Thanks,
thank
Kristen.
you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Congratulations.
Next, we'd like to recognize a teacher for national board certification. Would Cedar Creek Elementary third grade teacher Rachel Kufelt come forward, along with Executive Director of Elementary Programs Brent Yeager. Rachel recently achieved first-time certification from the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. This honor is the highest professional credentials that teachers can earn. It is a really big deal. Congratulations. And I know your family is here as well.
Oh,
Have them stand as well.
yes, my husband Kevin, my children Aubrey and Drake, and my mom Carol.
Next, we'd like to recognize Annabelle Darby, a senior at Olathe North. Annabelle, if you could come forward, along with Assistant Principal Jennifer Noteboom. Annabelle has earned a perfect score of 36 on the ACT. Less than 0.1% of students who take the ACT earn this top score. Congratulations. Annabelle, we'd love your family to stand and be recognized as well. Congratulations. Next, we'd like to recognize Taylor Cooper from Olathe Northwest High School. Taylor, if you come forward, along with Principal Krista. Taylor was recently named the Gatorade Kansas Volleyball Player of the Year. Wow. Gatorade Volleyball Player of the Year program annually recognizes one volleyball player from each state, which is a huge honor. Congratulations, Taylor. And Taylor, is your family here as well?
Yes, my mom, Jen, my dad,
Finally, tonight we'd like to recognize 2 schools and their students for recent thespian honors. We're going to start with Olathe North. Would the Olathe North students come forward, along with theater teacher Dustin Pence and assistant principal Jennifer Noteboom? Olathe North High School was chosen to bring a chapter select one-act show to the International Thespian Festival over the summer, which is a first for the school. At the State Thespian Festival, they were given the Gold Honor Troupe Award. This award recognizes theater troupes that actively participate in theater outreach, productions, and bringing theater to the community. This is the highest award a thespian troupe can receive at the state level. And Emily Martin, are you here? Put your hand. Okay. She was elected as a state thespian officer as well. So congratulations to you all. Congratulations. I know your families are here. We want them to stand or wave if you're standing already. Congratulations. And finally tonight, we're going to recognize Olathe South's Troop 5006. Did I say that right? You can all come forward along with theater teacher David Hastings and Principal Clint Alvarez. Troop 5006 was one of 11 schools in the nation that were chosen to perform on the main stage of the International Thespian Festival this coming summer. This is a highly coveted invitation, and this will be their 4th main stage show for Olathe South. Sophomore Anna Hastings, wait. She was elected as Vice Chair Thespian Officer for Kansas Thespians as well. So congratulations to the whole crew. Congratulations and good luck to all of you this summer, both teams. Thank you.
Did you last month take a break? At any point? So they got rid of the break. They didn't break last. So it'll be efficient use of our time. That's good.
Thank you, Maggie, for those recognitions. We'll go ahead and proceed with our scheduled meeting. And we will go ahead with public comments.
At each regular meeting, the Board of Education reserves limited time for individuals wishing to address the board. We request that individual speakers limit their comments to 5 minutes. The clerk will monitor the time and notify the speaker when the 5-minute time limit has expired. Please direct your comments to the entire board. If a response is appropriate, the president will respond or refer to another individual. In an effort to respect privacy, we ask that speakers refrain from discussing personal complaints involving individual staff members or students. Those speaking are advised that public comments are videotape recorded for broadcast on the district's educational access channel and audio recorded as a matter of public record. Individuals addressing the board should come to the podium at the front of the room and state your name and address.
And I believe we do have one speaker here this evening, Lori Neely. Good evening, Lori. It's good to have you here.
So Lori Neely, 1008 East New London, Olathe. I think with all the school shootings, and especially the most recent one, my question is, what is there as far as legislation that is in place that parents can be watching for to vote on? I just want to know more about that. Where's the beginning of the process for us to start and take action in that way to help the staff and obviously our students?
You want to go ahead and address your full questions and comments that you have?
Yeah.
And you know, and Mrs. Neely, I might share with you too, we have a presentation later this evening, and I don't know if you saw the agenda or not,
yeah,
but Dr. Dugan is going to be talking and answering maybe some of these questions, but we'll be discussing that.
Okay. So that was my main one, and also just asking, you know, from a staff's perspective, what do they feel that they need in place? And this is all, again, regarding legislation. And for us, what steps as parents can we start to take place to help put that in place and help out with the safety?
Okay. Other comments? No. You know, Your comments tonight are obviously timely, and I know our staff, our schools, our principals, leadership have all been communicating with each other. And again, I know Dr. Dugan's going to be sharing additional information with us here this evening that, again, is what we all need to hear, not only as leaders here at Board of Education, but our community. And thank you for being here this evening and sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Was there anybody else in the audience that wishes to address the board? Seeing none, let's go on for our presentations, our information presentations. Read Across America. We have Don Mercer. Good evening.
Hi. Students in Olathe will join millions of their peers across the country to celebrate the 21st Annual National Education Association's Read Across America Day on Friday, March 2nd, 2018. NEA's Read Across America Day, which celebrates Dr. Seuss's birthday and the joys of reading, expects more than 45 million readers, both young and old, to pick up a book and read. To honor the good doctor and celebrate the fun and value of reading, Olathe NEA is asking you to join NEA and many of America's leading literacy, youth, and civic groups in bringing a nation of readers together under one hat, the red and white striped stovepipe hat made famous by the Cat in the Hat, for a flurry of reading excitement. As Dr. Seuss said, you're never too old, too wacky, too wild, to pick up a book and read with a child. If you are interested in reading with students tomorrow, please let me know and I will find a school just for you. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Mr. Tim Brady, doing a presentation on overnight study, student activities and trips.
Well, good evening once again. Every month you have the opportunity to look at various trips that we have going on in our district. So my goal here tonight is just to share some important information regarding these various trips. These trips that you approve are truly educational in nature, and they also tie in with our district vision statement of students prepared for their future. The trips that you approve each month support our future architects, engineers, medical personnel, programmers, musicians, business leaders, journalists, and many more careers. It also ties into our Board of Education goal of improved student achievement. Students are showcasing their talents outside of the classroom, allow students to build upon their current knowledge. Examples would include robotics, environmental studies, technology, culinary arts, sports medicine, public speaking, fine arts, and many, many more. The trip requests that come to you all meet Board of Education policy. You know, if you knew there was a board policy on student trips, but there is, and all the trips are connected with our board-approved curriculum and do impact student performance. You may be asking, well, how many trips do we approve every year? Well, a lot. Here's a 4-year history. As you can see, it kind of ranges from the mid-40s to the mid-60s, and we're on pace this year to once again to reach that 60-plus mark. So what types of trips do you approve? I kind of divide them up into 3 categories. There are the national trips, and oftentimes these are the ones that are out of state and in large cities. For like our music groups, they're all on a 3-year rotation. So like orchestra, chorus, and band, every year they're going out of state for these trips. Some of these national trips our students are going to because they qualified for it through a regional or state competition, or they were invited to go to this national trip. Now, in some cases, you help fund these national trips. In some cases, you don't, and I'm going to get into a little bit more details about that later. The second category deals with more state and regional trips. These would be in Kansas or here in the Kansas City metropolitan area. These competitions will be their kind of the final pit stop for these particular groups, but it could be a trip or an experience that they had that might qualify them for a national opportunity. Culinary arts would be the best example of that. And the final category would be our local trips, or just some miscellaneous things. And these are our shorter trips, less expensive, and typically district funds are not requested for that. So let's talk about funding a little bit. There's different ways that these trips are funded. Sometimes they're supported through just our district funds, and then building funds, family and student support, and typically that ties into that next bullet of fundraising. We want our kids to have some skin in the game, if you will, and you know, work hard and maybe get some overtime at their job, or whatever it might be, to help supplement these trips. But we also do receive some grant money, particularly like the Carl Perkins grant, and sometimes we receive donations to help take care of some of these trips. Okay, so how about district funds? When are those used? District funds are supported for a national trip when a group is a top finisher at a state or regional event. If they're in the top 3 and they qualify for nationals, we will help support that financially. At the state level, if it's the group's pinnacle event, okay, like KMEA this past weekend in Wichita, if it's the pinnacle, their bonus, if you will, we'll help support that financially at the district level. Final slide is we kind of tie all this together. Just some other odds and ends. Our 21st Century Academies are just kind of in their own circumstance, if you will. We do support those when it's the highest level of competition. Once again, I won't go back to culinary arts. Had a lot of success there. We tend to go to nationals every year, and we help support that financially. However, it's not a blank check. There are caps on how much money is allotted for lodging, meals, and transportation. Most of the trips that you approve do not require district support. We're paying for these at the building level and all those other types of things that you saw on that list on the previous slide. Students and staff are very thankful. I wish you could hear the great stories of when they return, the successes, the experiences they've had, and we've all been benefactors of going on trips as youth or young adults, and we still talk about those. We have those great memories, and by your support, our kids and staff are having those as well. So once again, your district vision statement, board goals are being met every time you approve a trip, and we want to thank you for that. So really just kind of wrap up, I'll leave it at that, and if you have any questions or comments, I'll be more than happy to field those for you.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Brady? Now, I know we've been looking forward to this presentation, understanding a little bit more about what the experiences are that the kids do have. I know my 2 daughters experienced that years ago when they took a couple of different trips, and it's an amazing experience for them, and they still talk about it today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Mr. Brady. Maggie Cole, Director of Communications, is going to be talking about demonstrating the mobile app that we have.
Good evening. Hopefully this works. It's working. Good evening. As you know, we have a commitment in our district to keep our parents, to keep our staff, and our community informed about everything that's happening in our district and in our schools. And we've been really fortunate, thanks to support from our Board of Education, that we've been able to add some additional tools to help us meet that commitment. One of those tools is the district's mobile app, and we launched the app last July, and since that time it has been downloaded more than 5,200 times. Which we believe means that 5,200 people are now more connected than they ever have been before to the district, which is very, very, very exciting. So I'd like to take you on a little tour of the mobile app. It can be found, for those of you who don't have it yet on your mobile devices, it can be found in the Google Play Store for Android, or the Apple Store, the App Store for Apple. You just search for Olathe Public Schools and it pulls up. It's free to download, of course. So this is the district's mobile app, and it is actually, we pull information from our website to the app. There's a funny connection between these two pieces, so it's not normally this slow to pull up. It is just how I'm broadcasting the app. So I promise it's really fast on your phone. So it's pulling information from the website, which means that the most updated information is pushed out to our app at all times. So on this homepage, you see the top stories from the website. You see the top story. Oh, it's a superintendent. Top stories from our social media channels get pulled to the app, so you have that at your fingertips. You also have, at the bottom right, you can see our district calendars right there. Other things that we have on the app, because we feel that it's important for our parents to have easy access to, Parent View, lunch menus, My Payments Plus, things like that. You can see here we have our social media channels on there, so you can access those really quickly as well. And we have this really cool resources folder that we're pretty excited about. And we have resources from our website divided up into different categories. So there's resources for parents available on our website that's pulled here, resources for students, for staff, and then for community as well. So, and these are things that we can constantly add to if we have new things that we want to make sure that people have quick access to. Something else that we love about the mobile app is we are able to send push notifications through the app. So anyone who has the mobile app on their phone can get push notifications from us. So it could be something like a snow day or a reminder to parents about an upcoming event, but we are able to push notifications through the app. And just starting this week, our schools are now able to push notifications through the app, because when you download the app to your phone, you can actually choose to get information from a particular building as well. So now our principals have an additional way that they can reach stakeholders through the app. We like to cast as wide of a net as possible with our communication messages, and the app gives us another tool to do so. The final thing I wanted to talk to you about today is something that's really, really near and dear to our hearts, and it's this safety and security tip line. This is a tip line you can click on, and of course it says if it's an emergency, call 911, but it has a variety of categories that you can pull down. And you can send a tip to us, to the district, on any one of these categories. You can select a particular building that you want to make sure gets the tip. All of our schools are in there, or you can send it just to the district. It can be anonymous, or you can put your information in there. You can include a GPS location, and then in the top right you can see you can include a photo or other document that would be important for the tip line. These tips automatically are sent to Rick Castillo, our manager of safety and security, and then they also go to the administrator of the building that the person selects. This tip line, we have received numerous tips already since the app is launched. And it's great because they get to Mr. Castillo within minutes, and he is able to help resolve situations really quickly. We had a very sensitive situation about a month or two ago where a student submitted a concern about a friend of theirs. And the student was concerned about their friend's mental health and was concerned that their friend might want to harm themselves. Rick got that message, and the principal of the building got that message, and within an hour or two, that family and that student was connected to the help that they needed. And so we feel like, not to overstate it, we feel like this tip line on the app has the potential to save lives if it hasn't already. So we are just so proud of this and proud to offer this to our community. And that is the mobile app, and I would love to answer any questions you might have. I hope everyone in the room has now downloaded the app to their mobile device while I was talking. Okay.
Not a question, but a comment, and I would just, for anybody watching this, I would highly recommend downloading the app. It's a lifesaver at 6 o'clock in the morning, so that I don't have to try to figure out what the phone number for Olathe South is when I need to call my kid in sick. So much easier. For nothing else, that.
Are the kids know about this? And I mean, how's that being messaged out to them?
You know, our first push with communication was really to get our parents connected, but we are forming a communication plan to get it out to the kids too. There are students who are aware of it, and we are going to be working the rest of this semester to try to push it out to buildings and make sure that our kids are aware as well, because we think there's great use for them too.
Okay. Thank you, this is great.
Is this calendar piece one that you can subscribe to so it can populate your calendar?
Do you know that?
Set it to like a current Google Calendar, is that what you're asking?
Or my iPhone, I can subscribe to like U.S. holidays or something like that, and it can populate.
That's a good question. I will find out. That's a really good question.
Okay.
Wow.
Sorry.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
That's what I've been asking for. It'd be really awesome.
Okay, I will find out, because if it does, I will come right back up here and tell you all about it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, if Mrs. Martin here, I know she has been talking about this app for a couple of years, and she's very pleased that it's up and running, and glad to see that 5,200, is that kind of what you anticipate? Do you anticipate it continue to grow, obviously,
I hope that it doubles by this time next year, but
Sure.
that is a very big statement to me. But I know we're thrilled. We're just thrilled to have any
Sure.
additional people feel connected to our district
Sure.
and be able to access information that's important on their mobile device. So
Communication is important, timely information is important as well, so thank you.
Real quick, one more question. So like if Mr. Castillo or the building administrator get the information, they get it on text or an immediate notification on
it's
their phone,
an email
or that
notification,
goes to them?
and it has a very specific subject line, so they know that it's a tip from the tip line. Rick Castillo is connected 24/7. Sorry, Rick.
Yeah.
He's connected 24/7, and he's forwarding tips on the weekends. It doesn't.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you.
Very
Appreciate
much.
it.
Now I'd like to hear about school redesign. It's good to have representatives here from Santa Fe Trail Middle School and Westview Elementary. Principals here this evening, and Dr. Yeager is going to start us off.
Good evening. I'm not very good at doing two things at once here. There we go. Yeah, I think I maybe opened it. As you know, last summer we had pretty extensive conversation about the Mercury 7 project that the Kansas State Department of Education launched. And as you know, with the support of Olathe NEA and our school staffs at Santa Fe Trail and Westview, and of course the support of our Board of Education, we're working through the process to redesign 2 of our schools. These school teams have worked extremely hard, and they're excited to share their information with you tonight before they take their show on the road next week. So this is a good night to ask them questions and things like that, because I know they'll get many next week. So with that, John Bell and his staff.
Thank you so much for having us here tonight. We're excited to share. Before we get started, I want to recognize my staff. We have about 20 teachers that are here tonight that have worked through this process with us over the last 7 months. And so if you work at Westview, would you stand up and let's give you guys a round of applause. It's been a very exciting journey, but it's been a lot of work, and they have worked their tails off, donating their time outside of the contract day to do a lot of planning and preparation, research, and lots of different things like that. So I'm very appreciative of my staff. I don't think I could have done it without every single one of them, so I'm thankful for them every day. This group standing up here with me, this is my redesign team, and so when we got selected in August to be a part of this redesign, I quickly gathered a small team together that was going to be my core group that I was going to work with, and so they have, we've gone to conferences together. We're going to present next week at a conference, but they're here to give me some moral support, and also they're going to share some information tonight too. But a little bit about Westview. We have about 240 students, and we have 29 full-time teachers. We're about 77% free and reduced lunch, and about 50% of our students are ELL students. And this is a picture that we took when we kicked off our redesign to our students, and we all have these matching redesign shirts. I wore my suit tonight, but everybody else got to wear got to wear the redesign shirts tonight. A couple years ago, we wrote our mission statement as a school community to prepare a diverse community for lifelong success. And as we went through this redesign process, we reevaluated that and said, is this still meeting the needs of our students? And we felt that as a community it did. But we needed to have a vision statement for this redesign and where we wanted to go. And so one of the first things we did is we gathered feedback from our community, from our teachers, our staff, and our students. And we created this logo here that says inspire, cultivate, and create. And as we redesign our schools, we don't want it to just be a place where kids learn math and reading. We want it to be a place where students are getting those life skills that they really need. They need to be able to collaborate. They need to be able to problem solve. They need to be able to think critically. And so as we've gone through this process, we want to cultivate that climate within our building. We want students to know how to create and share what they've created. And we really want to inspire them to be lifelong learners that are just excited about everything that they're doing at school. And so that's been our why as we've gone through this. We felt that it was important that as a staff, we knew why we were doing this. We're not just doing it because we want to present at board meetings and things like that. We really want to do it to reach kids and to help prepare them for their futures. So we have worked with KSD through this entire process. We have a person from KSD named Tammy Mitchell, and she meets with us about once a month, and she comes and spends 2 hours with us, or 4 hours, or as much time as we need. And she provides a lot of One, just some encouragement for our team as we've gone through this. She's given us lots of guidance, steps we need to follow through to take to make sure that we're on the right track. She's also connected us with different resources through the internet, with articles, with other schools to connect with, facilitating us visiting some other schools, and connecting us with just people across the country. The team from KSE has traveled to lots of different places around the country, and the information they were able to bring back to us was very helpful as well. So we've enjoyed working with Tammy, and she's helped us kind of keep going in the right direction, making sure we're not getting off track, and just making sure that we're going to end up with a good plan in the end. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Miss Kilby.
Hi there, my name's Mrs. Kilby, Jessica Kilby, and I've taught at Westview, and I currently teach 4th grade. I have taught 1st and 2nd grade at Westview as well. And so one of the things when we found out we were doing this redesign is that we wanted to make sure that we were collecting data from multiple stakeholders and not just coming up with all of our ideas just as a team. And so we decided to first put it out to our students, and at first we asked our students, what could school be like for you in your dream school? And a lot of our students hadn't ever really had that opportunity to dream big, and so that was a really hard question for them. And so we had to refine our question to, what do you not like about school? So we asked every single student from grades kindergarten through 5th grade about what they did not like about school. And we had a lot of really interesting answers and some standard ones too. So that was really fun to do. We also talked to all of our parents. We went out to the carpool line for car duty and out back in the walkers, and we talked to the different parents about a few different questions. The sample one up there is, what skills do you want your child to have? And we also talked to them about, what are your dreams and your goals for your students? We then talked to our teachers and we said, if you could do school however we wanted, what would it look like? And so this was a chance for the teachers to really dream big and have kind of a say in what it was that we felt like a dream school could be like. And so we collected all of this data and we compiled it into just one massive data piece. And on one of those conference times that we drove down to Little Rock, Arkansas, and we got to spend 6 hours in the car with each other each way, we actually looked at all of that data together and we broke it out into different components and tried to see where all of those different data pieces were kind of being able to be. And so once we did that, we then took that huge list of data and we prioritized it into what we felt like were the biggest priorities for us. And so all of those different data pieces fell into these 4 main focus areas at Westview, and we had personalized learning, project-based learning, social emotional learning, and then our community group. And every single teacher that was certified at Westview actually joined one of these focus areas voluntarily out of their own time to do a little bit more research and development to see how we could bring these 4 focus areas to Westview to improve education and to improve the opportunities for our students. And so over these next few slides, we're going to talk a little bit more about each one of these focus areas.
Hi, I'm Brianna Salazar. I teach ELL. I've taught ELL for 10 years, but this is my first year at Westview. One of the first areas that we looked at was personalizing learning. To do so, we started with consolidating our 4th and 5th grade and putting them together. This allowed us to personalize groups for them in reading and math and really meet a larger, broader scale of needs for our students, both our lower needs, but also enriching our students' learning with their groups. And then we also tried to make sure that throughout our entire process that we gave students as much voice and choice throughout their day so that they had that opportunity to take ownership for their learning. And then we also wanted to increase their movement, so we have flexible seating in our den groups, which is where we bring all our 4th and 5th grade students together for different mini lessons. And then to also increase movement, we have 4 15-minute recesses throughout the day that allows instruction to be broken up a bit so that they have the opportunities that when they're in instruction they can focus because they've had that movement.
Project-based learning was an area that we were really excited to delve more into, and we did a lot of research in this area. Our staff, we made out a challenge to all of our staff members that every grade level would attempt to do at least 1 project-based learning unit for this school year. And we have every grade level, kindergarten through 5th, will be trying this out. And this is just an inquiry-based approach to allow the students these different components that you see up on the screen, and these are the essential components for project-based learning. We have a showcase that we're going to be putting on in April where all of our students will be able to showcase their learning and their work and kind of their journeys to anybody that would like to come. So you guys might want to come, I don't know. But keep an eye out. So we're really excited though to try this out and to see some of the benefits. 4th and 5th grade have actually tried a couple project-based learning. We did one unit last semester before we started the redesign. And then as a group, together, combined, we've done one. And we actually had a mini showcase today. And we're very excited to see a lot of the growth that our students made. A lot of those real-world skills are probably the things we saw the most growth in. As we went around asking students questions such as, what did you learn about yourself? It was really surprising to see some of the insights that the kids had. And students were saying things like, I learned that we can't do things alone. I learned that we have to work as a team. I had some students who said, I learned that I can be a leader. I'm not somebody who thought I could be a leader in the past, and now I feel like I can be one. And so some of those parts were just as important as the academic growth that we saw, and we're really excited to keep learning about it. We have a conference coming up at the end of May where a couple of us will get to go and learn some more from the Buck Institute, and the Buck Institute is what they consider the gold standard of PBL. So we're really excited to have that opportunity to go and bring that information back to Olathe and get to share that with our staff and our community.
Hi, I'm Megan Bartek. I teach 2nd grade at Westview Elementary. I've taught there. This is my 4th year I've taught there, and I'm currently going back to school to get my master's in school counseling. When we started this journey through this redesign, we felt that after gathering all the information that we did, that social emotional learning was a huge piece in this. And to me, it's kind of the piece that's interwoven with all of the other pieces that come into play here. We felt that our students needed social and self-awareness, relationship skills, self-management, and responsible decision-making. And so we've kind of started that, trying to implement that throughout our day. Even now through, just since January, we've started a community breakfast, which I'm sure you guys have heard about. And with that, the schools are, the school's divided from each classroom teacher and certified staff gets a group of students ranging from kindergarten to 5th grade. And they come to school and they eat breakfast with each other every morning. And it's kind of just a break from their busy lives and what goes on at home to, hey, you're at school and we're gonna talk about whatever you feel like talking about, and just kind of getting them ready for the day instead of jumping in right into academics. Another piece that we are implementing would like to propose to have a second school counselor. Just we felt like with the students that attend our school, it's a huge need for our kiddos. And with adding a second counselor, they would get guidance 2 times a day or 2 times a week, as well as individual counseling with a certified counselor and group counseling. Also, next year, we haven't implemented it yet, but next year we plan to do, like, our community breakfast is kind of a check-in point, and next year we plan to do something like a checkout point. So that kind of ties in with the personalized learning, where they're going to have student profiles. Well, they're going to be setting goals through all of that, and our teachers are going to the students are going to come to them at the end of the day and kind of reassess how their day was so that we can send them home. So this is a huge piece, and we're really excited to implement it.
Hello, my name's Brandy Michaelis, and I'm an instructional resource teacher with the district, but Westview is near and dear to my heart. I taught kindergarten there for 8 years and was invited to be back on this team to help just kind of bring that kindergarten lens, that kindergarten readiness focus to Westview, since that is a really big component of the state and what they are looking for in the redesign project. So when we looked at all of those data points, there were endless comments about increasing community involvement. And we know that Westview is just one of the most unique schools in Olathe. It's so tiny and it's locked in by railroad tracks and highways, and we have this wonderful little neighborhood. And for the most part, our families, we have these wonderful families who just trust us. They'll just send their babies to us and they know they're in good hands. And we love that about Westview. But we also know that we have families that we could really start to develop as leaders and really get them involved in our school and involved in the community. And so that's something we'd like to do. Our community plans, we haven't started anything right now with the pilot because our ideas are so grand. We know it's gonna take up to 3 years to kind of roll those things out slowly. One thing we are going to do for the remainder of the school year is invite staff who is willing to go on home visits with our families. Again, that they are really good about bringing their kids to us, but we also want to go to them in a place where they feel comfortable and just have fun, get to know them, find out more about them, see what their hopes and dreams are for their child, and then move forward with a positive relationship that way. As I mentioned, the state has a large focus on kindergarten readiness, and we know that that is an area that we want to continue to work on at Westview. We currently have an early childhood program, but the majority of the students in it do not attend Westview. They go back to their home schools by kindergarten, and we would like to kind of change that look. We'd like to have early childhood programs at Westview for Westview students so they can naturally flow into the kindergarten classroom. And they've already established those strong relationships with adults and teachers at our school, and then we can kind of continue that education journey in kindergarten. We have, as we talk about project-based learning, we know being right in downtown Olathe, there are so many communities and businesses right around us that we'd like to invite in. They have knowledge and expertise that they could bring to these project-based learning projects better than we could ever do, better than a website could do, being pulled up, on a screen. So we'd love to bring those real-life people in to show students, this is a problem people deal with. Here's how they deal with it. They can lend their expertise to us, and then students can benefit from just making those, connections with the community. So those are a few things we are starting with, and we have big dreams. So watch and see what we do.
So we mentioned getting to go and visit some schools. Locally here, we went and visited Epic Elementary in Liberty, Missouri, and they have a strong emphasis on project-based learning. Their whole day is built around project-based learning. And seeing the facility, there's some pictures from Epic. Their facilities are designed, the building was built to do project-based learning, to have large groups of kids working collaboratively to complete a project. I know we heard about a 5th grade project where they worked on solving world hunger, and they didn't solve world hunger, but they worked locally to work with harvesters and did a food drive and went to harvesters and volunteered some time there to complete their project and grew some things in their garden at the school to help with that also. And so it was just a year-long project that they worked on, and it was really neat to see what they had done there and get some ideas on what that can actually look like once these kids have been doing it for several years and know what project-based learning is. We also went to Apache Elementary School in Shawnee Mission and saw they have, again, a project-based learning focus there and saw some neat things. And then we also were able to take a group to Washington, D.C. and visit 3 schools in Washington, D.C. Again, with that project-based learning, expeditionary learning focus where they're going out into the community and learning in the streams and creeks of the community, in the buildings in the community, rather than the school being the only place where kids learn. And so that was really neat to see some great examples. We also were able to attend a conference in Little Rock, Arkansas, and heard from several schools from around the country that have done some innovative things and redesigned their schools. The idea of combining grade levels into a larger team, we heard from a school that's in Arkansas, and while we've modified that vision, we got some neat ideas just from talking with that team of teachers. And so it was really neat to go visit those schools and learn, but at the same time, we weren't trying to say, oh, that's a great school, we want to do exactly what they're doing. We know our Westview community, we've collected our data from our community, from our staff and our families, and so we really wanted to take pieces and tidbits from each of those places that we learned about and from the articles we read and develop a plan that was going to work best for our school. And that's been the neat part about this, is that we've heard of a lot of different things from a lot of different people, but we're developing a plan that we think is best for Westview. And so it's been great to work with the district to try to dream big but still work within the constraints that we have with budget and things like that also. So it's nice also that we have 6 other school districts in Kansas that are doing this with us. And so there's been a lot of collaboration. The district has set up some websites that we can go to share information between the teams, kind of like a blog where we can each post things. There's a playbook that we use to kind of guide us through the process. We've worked with Tammy, and Tammy from KSC has done a great job of setting up times for us to collaborate. I know I went with Dr. Dayton and Dr. Yeager to McPherson back in November and met with school leaders from those other districts and collaborated with them about where they were with their process and the struggles they're going through and their successes and just how are things working. We've had a couple online meetings with those principals again, just collaborate and talk and bounce ideas off each other. And then Twitter's actually been like one of our best resources that we have because we're all following each other on Twitter and we're able to just kind of see the things they're doing and we send each other emails and say, hey, I saw you did this, tell me more about that and how did that work, what were the logistics, those types of things. And then next week I'm very excited that I get to take this team with me here to Manhattan to go to the Kansas Can Symposium, and we're going to present at that, but the other 6 Mercury schools are also going to be there, and I'm excited to get some time to collaborate with them in person with our teams also, so that's looking forward to that very much. So some next steps, obviously we're in a pilot right now. We did a lot of research that first semester and then we completely changed our schedule and tried some crazy things second semester here, and it's been a lot of fun. And we know that it was a pilot, and it's funny because every day we sit and talk with the different teachers in the groups and say, this is working, this isn't working, how are we going to fix this? And there's lots of little tweaks and changes we're making. And so our next step is to kind of keep going with that pilot, but then collect some data. We're surveying kids and parents and staff. We're also looking at our academic data to make sure that we're making the gains that we should be making. As we do that, then we're going to start trying to finalize that plan for next year. So we piloted some things in just 4th and 5th grade this year because we don't logistically have the means to do it school-wide without making some other changes. So we want to evaluate that and make sure that is that something we want to do school-wide. We also, there's so many other things we weren't able to get started this year just because it was too much to bite off all at once. And so we want to keep looking at what is that plan to build one cohesive plan all together, what's that going to look like for next year. And so March, April, May is when we're going to be kind of finalizing that plan and putting it together. And then over the summer, we'll present to KSCE at one of their board meetings about kind of what that final plan is going to look like for Westview. But obviously with this, there's a lot of change. And this is one of the things I keep noticing is that our teachers are working really, really hard, and I'm trying to find time to give them. And so that professional learning has been huge, and the district has been very supportive of getting us training from the Buck Institute and letting us go to conferences. But that's going to be an ongoing piece for the next several years as we try to do all these things. It's great to have the ideas in your head, but actually implementing them takes a lot of time in preparation and learning from others and failing and trying again and those types of things. So I'm excited to keep working with our team at Westview. It's been a really fun process. I think I've told Dr. Yeager that this is probably the most fun I've ever had in education, but it's also the least amount of sleep I've ever gotten in education. But it's been a really neat process, and I'm excited about the direction that we're going. So that's all we have for tonight. If you're not following us on Twitter, make sure that you are, because we're trying to post things every day, and you can learn from us. So check us out on Twitter, and also the Kansas Redesign Group, the KSCE Redesign Group has a Twitter page that's pretty interesting to follow as well. So we'll open it up for questions if you have any.
Questions or comments from the board?
First, I'd just first say, wow, that's awesome. I knew when my daughter had you and at Ravenwood Elementary, I knew you go a long ways, but wow, to this is awesome. So congratulations on leading this, and thank you. I know there's great things still to come and your team, but I had a couple of questions. One was about the, you probably have some staff members who've been teaching for a really long time, and change is sometimes difficult. I was wondering how, you have a lot of young staff members as well that I'm sure were really eager, but some of the ones that have been there longer, how you have some challenges related to that, and then just the measurements of success that you see.
Change is hard for everybody. It's hard for me too. It does, and I think that's been, we keep going back to the why, and we really have hit that hard. Every time we talk about what we're doing, we talk about why we're doing it. And I think as a staff, back in May when Dr. Yeager kind of presented this as an opportunity, and we went to staff and said, hey, this is what I'm thinking, but are you guys on board with it? And we had everybody at Westview said, yes, let's do this. Because I think we've always noticed that the traditional plan that we've had with teaching with the, a long-range plan of lessons for math and a long-range plan of lessons for English language arts and all that, it hasn't worked for our kids. We have some unique challenges at Westview with some of our demographics and the needs of our students. And so I think when we had that opportunity as a staff to say, let's try something different, we have a pretty supportive group of teachers that have said, yeah, let's do this. And that's not to say that change isn't, we're still struggling through some of those changes. And I think there's a lot of stress with this associated with it. But I also think I have an awesome staff that's just said, yeah, let's do it. And I've been pretty honest with the staff from the get-go saying, hey, this is the direction we're going. You have to tell me if this isn't what you're wanting. And we haven't had a lot of people saying, I'm out. So it's been pretty impressive to see people working like they're working. And I'm excited to see next year when we're all doing the new things, and it's going to be stressful, but I think it's going to be there's going to be some neat things happening. What was the second? You had a second follow-up question?
You're good.
Okay.
Great job.
Along those same lines, I'm curious. I know that we're working with limited data, limited time, a small sample size, but to your point about the change for staff, have you seen, even just sort of anecdotally, how are the kids reacting to this?
And so that's one of the things that we've done throughout the process is survey the kids. Right when we kicked it off in January, we kind of got some perceptions. We did a second dipstick here about a week ago, and we haven't really looked at that data yet. And then we're going to do it again before spring break, before we start making those decisions about what next year is going to look like. I talk to kids every day. I have a kindergartner and a second grader that go to Westview, my personal ones, and I talk to them every day and what do you think about this breakfast and those kinds of things. And at the beginning there was it was mixed reactions. Some kids were really hesitant about the changes. I know my son said, I miss eating breakfast with my friends because he was always eating with his second graders. Now he says the breakfast group is like his family, so he's eating breakfast with his family. So I think some of it's an adjustment for the kids just as much as it's for the teachers. I remember the first week of this of our pilot, there was a fifth grader that I talked to that had been pretty down about school for the last semester just because of friendship things and things like that. And that about a week in, she came up to me and she goes, Mr. Bell, this is the most fun I've ever had at school. And so that just kind of, and I don't think it's always perfect. Our fifth grade group has been a challenging group this year, and it's still a challenging group even with this redesign. I would say that overall, we're getting fewer walkie-talkie calls for asking for assistance and things like that. It's not perfect though, and we still have a long ways to go, but I also think if we get more of these different supports that we're looking for in place, once the plan is more cohesive as a whole building, a lot of it, this year we're trying some things without trying to redo the entire system, which makes it kind of hard. It's not the ideal situation always. And so I think when we can get everything in place the way that we want it, I'm curious to see what it does for kids. But overall, I think the perception has been that it's working. It's not perfect yet. We still have a ways to go. Just like we were talking about with the projects that we just did. I think if you ask the teachers, they would say, we didn't like this about it, we didn't like this about it, or this about it, but this is what we're going to do next time so that it works better. And I think as we do those things, we'll get more comfortable with it. The kids will get more comfortable with it. Our fifth graders have never had to kind of think on their own. They've always been told this is how to walk in line at school. This is how to do a worksheet. This is how to fill out your paper. We're letting kids walk in the halls without walking in line. They're kind of leaving specials and going back to class on their own. They're self-managing, kind of like what you see at the middle schools. And that's a transition for those kids because they've been so trained to do things the exact way that we've told them to do it. And so just like it's a change for the teachers, it's a change for the kids, it's a change for the parents as well. And we've had a couple parents hesitant about some of these changes, but we're talking to them and explaining our reasoning. And we keep going back to the why we're doing it. Most of our parents can't argue with that because we're doing it for the right reasons.
Good, thanks.
Jonathan, there were several of us that were able to be there when you did your kickoff and you took the big picture and everything else. And I know you were kind of talking to some of the children about some of the things they're excited about. The first one was recess. Yeah. And your announcement of getting to do more recesses, and I thought the place was going to blow up. Yeah. And they were so excited about it. So it sounds like you have enacted that, and it sounds like that's probably been recepted very well with the children. One of the things I had some questions about would be just the parent involvement. We know how important the community and the family, and you spoke to that a little bit. Are you seeing a higher level of parent engagement and involvement in getting involved with this? I know one of you, I can't remember which one, was talking about going out and meeting with them, which I think is a grand idea because we need to keep them engaged. But Are you seeing more parents getting involved with this process maybe?
Not with this process as much as we would like, and that's why one of the things we're going to do is those home visits, is because I think we've tried to, our community has always been a difficult one to, like Brandy said, they like to drop them off and trust us to do our job. It's been hard to engage them into being really involved with the school. If we say we need you to do this, they do it, but we're having to push for a lot of that. And so I think these home visits, we're going to work on developing those relationships. Honestly, a lot of our families, when we say redesign, they're still not quite sure what that is. And we have some families that are very connected and know, but I know Ms. Martin came to our site council meeting when we talked about redesign for a little bit. And we had, 5 parents there that were with us. 2 of them were staff members, and the other 3 were English-speaking families. And so connecting with that Spanish-speaking community that we have, that's very important to our community, we're still working on getting there. And so that's where I think we're going to start with these home visits. We're going to start developing that group of leaders within that community, and we're really hoping that they can bring some new things to the table, because I think sometimes when we talk about PTO, that's a foreign concept to some of our families, and we need to find some avenues for them to be involved that are more inclusive to everybody in our community. And so that's one of the things we're really working on. Now, we've gone out of our way to collect the feedback from families. Like we said, we stood out in the car line and at dismissal and really talked to families with interpreters there to make sure that we got feedback, not just from our English-speaking families, but from our community as a whole. But it has been a challenge, and it's going to continue to be a challenge. But I also think it's something that it's time for us to tackle this challenge, and let's get them involved.
That's right. And so in that line, though, Jonathan, so we really want to have an opportunity to really redesign it. I don't want to put you on the spot or make you feel uncomfortable or anything else, but do you really feel that you're getting a chance to really make a big change and really making a big redesign? And are you getting the resources that you need from us? I'm not putting anybody down, but are you really getting the resources you need from all of us to really make a difference and make a change? Because that's the purpose of this. We're not just looking for little small incremental changes. Especially in your environment, this is a great opportunity to really look at this, especially with the children that you work with, and say, how can we make a major improvement? I want to make sure that we're giving you guys the resources to do that.
And I would say, there's certain constraints that we have, like budget. We have to work with, our task from the get-go was Westview should cost the same next year to run as it did this past year. And so we're working as hard as we can to do that. I've been working with Dr. Yeager and with Mr. Allison to kind of work on some staffing adjustments and changes and tweaks within that same budget to reallocate some resources and some things like that. We still have standards that we need to teach our kids, and especially, first graders need to learn how to read. They need to know how to do their basic math. So there are some things like that we know that no matter what we do, we still got to make sure those things are happening. But I feel like we have had a lot of flexibility with, the kids are there for 6 hours and 40 minutes a day, and we've had a lot of flexibility to kind of say, let's redesign that completely. And so when we're talking about combining grade levels and not having explicit science and social studies instruction, but embedding that completely through project-based learning and things like that, I feel like we're pushing the limits a little bit from everything that we've seen with where we're going with this. And so it's kind of exciting, but it's also new territory. And like I said, there's going to be some failures with that, but I feel very supported by the district with everything that we've done. There's been a few things that I was told, maybe we can't do that. That might be, but for the most part, it's been, yep, let's try this. That's awesome. And Mr. Allison and Dr. Yeager and Dr. Dane and several other people have been at Westview working with our team, talking to KSD, and really making sure. I think the question I've heard more is, are we giving you enough leeway? It hasn't been, you need to slow down. It's been like, dream big, keep pushing it a little bit. And so they've been involved throughout this whole process also. And I don't feel like there's been a lot of, no, you can't do this. It's been very supportive as we've gone through this.
Well, I think it's important for all of us. And again, so the budgeting piece of it, we know we have challenges across the entire district, across the entire state. So these are the things that I want us to make sure that we're tracking. And if there are some constraints like that, making sure that we're thinking about this. And again, if we're going to really do something, that's what we want to come to the board and say, hey, if we're really going to make a change, and if it's going to cost a little bit more, bring that to us, bring it through the right measures and ask for it. But bring those things to us and give us an opportunity to be able to say, okay, if there is a constraint, let us try to lift that as much as we possibly can. And I know we're all working together to be able to do that. But if we're not aware of it, it's hard for us to make those changes. So thank you for everything you guys are. You're all doing a wonderful job. Thank you for everything.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bell, and your entire staff for being here this evening. Had a great turnout. When is the showcase event, by the way? In April? April 24th?
And we'll send out invitations.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And now we'll hear from Santa Fe Trail Middle School. Good evening.
Good evening.
How you doing?
Thanks, John, for that. Wish we would have went first. No, this is going to be great. So thank you for having us here tonight. We really appreciate the opportunity. My name is J.J. Leibel. I'm the proud principal at Santa Fe Trail. I have two of my redesign team members, two staff members here. We have Deb Hill and we have Pinky McMillan. They're going to share part of this presentation as well. So just wanted to kind of just go through a little bit of some of the things are going to be similar. I'll try to kind of quickly go through the things that maybe John has talked about, but we're really excited about this process. The thing that we try to keep going back to is that mission statement, empowering all learners to explore. We spent a lot of time on that mission statement, and the staff, I think, was like, okay, what's next? You guys are spending a lot of time, but we really felt like we needed to get that right. And one of the things that we did at the very end is we included that word all. Because we said, that really that all means all, and I'm going to talk about that here in a little bit. But, back to that mission statement of empowering, we really kind of, we chewed over those words, empowering all learners, not just students, but all learners to explore. So that's very, very important to our group, and we try to continue to go back to that. So just a little bit about SFT. We have 735 students and 115 staff members. And we're about 50% free and reduced, a combination of free and reduced on that. That number has actually come down a little bit from last year. It was about 56% last year, so it's dropped a little bit. We're about close to 30% English language learners as well. We have 3 full-time ELL teachers as well. One of the other pieces of data that I didn't put on here, but I can mention is that we have about 100 students that transfer in and out during the course of a year. So we have, we're a very transient building. We get new students. I think last year we had a new 8th grader transfer in within the last 2 weeks of school. So that is a challenge as well. And our home, I will say that as our numbers for free and reduced have dropped, I know that our numbers for our homeless students has risen this year as well, because we're averaging maybe a student every 2 weeks or so that we're seeing that's either falling into that category or a student that has moved in. So, we have our challenges. SFT, as we celebrate our 50th anniversary this year, and we're a very, very proud building. We're a very unique building. If you've ever been in SFT and you walked around and you've made it out, it's a very interesting building, but we love it there. We're proud to work there. So. John put this up here, but just a quick kind of rundown. We're out of phase 1. We spent quite a bit of time in phase 1 just building that launch pad, and that is where we worked on our refined vision, organized a redesign team. We have 8 members of the redesign team. That redesign team, they are a dedicated group. They meet on Fridays. We meet on Fridays, and we are meeting with Jay Scott, who's our KSDE rep that comes in and works with us, or we're meeting on Fridays at 3:30. I don't know if we'll meet next Friday at spring break. I don't know if we'll meet then. We meet on Fridays, so Fridays from 3:30 to 5 we're meeting. So that's how passionate and dedicated these teachers are to this process. And we set some goals and some action steps as well. So I've talked about this a little bit, but when we talk about empowering, and John mentioned quite a bit of this too, of his 5th graders being more empowered. We're looking at that with our students as well, that we want our students to be self-advocates. We want our students to show some grit, be resilient, show empathy towards each other. And that word all, I mentioned it, but all means all. All means all students, we talk a lot about teach low floor to high ceiling, teach to the edges. Don't just teach down the middle, because if you get the edges, then you get everybody. But that's CBR, that's our ED population, our teachers as well. Our students aren't just learners, we're learners as well. Pinky actually talked about this the other day, so I'm going to shout out to her on this one, but she said, would you rather have a classroom full of students or full of learners? And that's what we've really been trying to push, and we want a classroom full of learners. And then that last piece, which you'll hear more about, is exploration. When middle school, I remember being at Indian Trail as a teacher when middle school, when we made the shift to a 6, 7, and 8 model, And the idea really was that students need to be able to explore. They need to have lots of options, lots of electives. They need to be able to explore different things. And so we've really tried to hit on that as well. So 3 pillars that we've looked at here, really the same as what you saw from Westview pretty much. Social and emotional learning. And the words that we have down here as well, we went through an activity that was really interesting where we talked about each one of these pillars. We put all the words up. And then Jay Scott said, okay, you have $5. Each one of you has $5 to spend. How much would you spend per word? And then what we did was we took and we said, okay, these are the words that are coming forward in each one of these categories. So things like I talked about empathy, self-regulation, kids being able to self-regulate, being able to accept no for an answer, those kinds of things, being able to have some grit. I have a freshman as well. We live in a neighboring school district, but I have a freshman. I could not get him to go to Santa Fe Trail last year. He did not want to go where his dad was the principal. I don't know why. But I would have loved it, but him maybe not so much. But anyway, so we talk about, our kids and like even with my students, showing grit, persevering, getting through it, that kind of thing. Problem solving under the academic pillar, communication. We talked a lot about our students and us being reflective learners. And then the civic engagement, leadership, which you're gonna see some of that in our exploration days, world and community awareness, and accepting others as well. So the next phase that we worked on was kind of creating a comprehensive redesign plan. We had investigation teams under each one of those pillars that got together during the school day, and the district was great in providing us subs. Shelley Longstreth is amazing. They were able to provide us subs for the day because our teachers were able to meet during the school day. So if you can imagine investigation teams of 10 to 12 teachers and then saying, oh, by the way, we're going to have another after-school meeting. We're able to say we're going to take a 2-hour block of your time during the day, and you're going to have a chance to meet, and we're going to have subs cover your classes. It was awesome. We met 3 times before winter break and really kind of narrowed down some of our plans. And then we're just starting to test some of those redesign strategies that you'll hear about today. So Pinky is going to talk about, right, you're up. She's going to talk about one of the lead measures that we started with the Cyclone Startup and Wrap Up.
So from our 3 pillars, I want to start off with the SEL, the social-emotional learning. And with this, we started quite a few, actually, pilots already this semester. The first one started in January, as soon as the kids came back from winter break. We went ahead and changed the schedule a little bit to where instead of going immediately to first hour, we went ahead and said, okay, why don't you go to your homeroom? So we're going to have a nice little soft start. We're not going to make you think as soon as you walk in the door. Let's go ahead and get your breakfast. Let's go ahead and talk about your goals for today. Let's go ahead and and build a little bit of relationships and with our Cyclone Circle that every teacher is mandatory that does it at least once a week. And it gave students a chance to basically get their cup of coffee and be able to ease into their day just like we normally would like to. And then at the end of the day, we also gave 10 minutes as well and said, okay, well, from here, let's go ahead and talk about, a nice little wrap up. Let's say, hey, we talked about this goal. Did you hit it? Hey, I know you had that math test. How do you feel you did? Oh, man, I know you have a math test next Thursday. Can we work on that together tomorrow? So it was one of those things that we could kind of touch base and basically have that positive start in the beginning as well as the end of the day. One of the other things that we also do during those Cyclone wrap-ups and startups is the second step. Second step is a program where we focus on some of the soft skills. I know Jay just got done talking about that resilience and learning about those values. So they're actually this data that we get from the panorama, we see and we're like, okay, what do these kids need? Because we know that unless their basic needs are met, so social-emotional needs are met, they're not going to be focused on the academics, right? So we want to make sure that we're focusing on those as well, because those are just as important, especially when you get into different careers and paths of knowing just as well as knowing how to read and write. So the second step is focused on, for example, we just did a lesson on Wednesday about values and, how do you apply that towards your friendships and what kind of actions and how do you be a good friend and how do you know, and when you have these obstacles, how do you overcome that? How do you have that resiliency? So I think this is excellent, because sometimes kids don't know. They think they know, but until we actually have a chance to talk about it, I think it's just as important. And the last is the exploration days. Exploration days kind of hits all three pillars, the academic, social-emotional, as well as the civic-minded. Deb is going to talk more about that when we get to that pilot. But first I want to go over some of the data from the Cyclone startup, because we did for about 3 weeks in January. And we had a pilot team, there we go, that we got the data from teachers and students. And it was kind of cool. When we talked to the students about this, we said, hey, did you enjoy this change of the schedule? And so 90% of students said yes, or they had neutral, like, oh yeah, it's just, either way, I don't mind. So either way, 90% of students either thought, hey, or that's awesome. And so that was a great response from the students, especially when you just came back from winter break. Because we started a little bit later with the first hour, believe it or not, our tardies went down for first hour. So that was wonderful, because I have a friend who's a math teacher, and she complains that if that kid misses those first 15 minutes, it's so hard to get them back into that lesson. So if they're not late, man, that just relieves a lot of problems right there. And what's crazy about this as well is that we actually changed the passing period to 4 minutes instead of 5, and we actually had less tardies. The kids were like, boom, I got to get there. No dawdling around now. And let's see here. And then one of the best things I think that came about this is that 90% of the teachers said that they were able to mentor daily with one of the students during that time. And as a parent, I think that's amazing, because it's so cool to think that I have a kid that someone's advocating for him and being able to touch with and has contact and is looking over him for those 8 hours that I don't get to see him. I'm going to go ahead and that's it. Oh, one more? Oh, and yes, thank you. And our disciplinary referrals, that's another good one. Our disciplinary referrals actually decreased by 32%. So once again, we get to focus on the academics when we don't have these issues that are coming about and missing some of that classroom instruction.
So as Pinky mentioned and JJ mentioned, we have 3 pillars that we're using, that we're building our redesign on. One of them is academic. And each of these pillars has an investigation team, and we each develop lead measures. And so one of the lead measures for the academic pillars was project-based learning, and we are incorporating that during the 4th quarter through our disciplinary literacy classes. Those teachers have already had Buck Institute training for PBL, and it's going to be a great opportunity for those kids who are in disciplinary literacy 4th quarter to get exposed to that, so that we'll touch many, many kids in the building, many students. Alternative schedules and flex scheduling is something that we're talking about at this point in time. We're looking at a variety of schedules to implement, and right now we're trying to decide what's going to work best for us. We've already implemented 2 school-wide pilots, and according to Jay Scott, who JJ has already mentioned, our coach from KSDE, that's a huge undertaking that none of the other schools across the state are taking on such giant pilots with over 700 students school-wide. And so we're looking very closely at this flex time possibility. What is the best way to run a pilot on that? Part of that would include intervention time. Jumped ahead there. We'll include intervention time during the day, because we have some students that need that direct instruction intervention, but it will also provide opportunities for those students who could use some enrichment and discovery time as well. And so as we continue to explore those ideas with the academic pillar, which is the one that's still under work, I would say, under construction, I will be looking at those possibilities as well. JJ's going to talk about these next couple of items.
So, a couple of other areas that we've kind of exploring right now, and we have not put any, specific plans in, but looking at, how do we continue to meet the needs of a couple of our most, vulnerable areas in ELL and special education, and we have, high numbers of students in both of those areas, and looking at, how we deliver that instruction maybe a little bit differently, and looking at some co-teach models for that. For both of those, and we're starting to explore some of those things as we go forward. And we want to make sure we do this piece right. So we really feel like that we need to get, we need to work on professional learning and make sure that this is the right fit in this classroom, because when this is done really, really well, it is amazing. I've been a part of a co-teach model. I kind of fell into one my 2nd year teaching. It made me a better teacher. But it needs to be done really, really well and with a lot of intentionality. One thing that's been kind of just a unintended consequence of this of the whole redesign process is this idea of professional learning on demand, and it's really been interesting to see. Okay, so when I mentioned these investigation teams and having a couple hours during the day, wow, what could that be like if we could just do that, you know? And so, for example, our teaching and learning sessions are amazing in the district. It's difficult for teachers to get there, and their lives are very busy after, but the sessions they have are so tremendous. What if we brought those to SFT? You know, what would that look like? And so one of the things that I want to explore is, as Deb will talk a little bit more about Exploration Day, is on the block where teachers are not teaching, what would it look like to have some professional learning there, and those teachers can go get that professional learning on demand, on site. They don't have to come before school or after school to get it. So really excited about the possibility of that as well. Back over to Deb.
Okay. So I am the co-facilitator along with Pinky for the civic engagement pillar. And we've had our meetings in December during the day, and then we reconvened this semester after school to talk further about it. And it's one that I am very excited about. One of the first things that we're looking at is a program called RSVP. It's sponsored through the National Student Council. And we have purchased this guideline that's going to train us and allow us to train our students on this new way of looking at student councils. Obviously, it stands for Raising Student Voice and Participation. And we're going to be visiting this for the first time during our Exploration Day next week. So we're going to start training students on how to share their ideas, how to think globally and act locally, and become more invested in their own learning. I'm going to let Pinky talk about job shadowing because that is her baby, and then I'll be finishing up that.
I'm really excited about this pilot. I know that with the 21st century programs, you know, I used to be an 8th grade teacher. I just moved down to 7th grade recently. I would be the one who's helping those students write those essays and put them in, and then I would see them the following years, and they would come back, and I ask, hey, how do you like it? And sometimes they're like, oh, yes, it's so great. And other times they're like, Mrs. McMillan, did you know that sports medicine is not about sports? It's about science. And I was like, yeah. And I feel like, especially with our population, that sometimes the kids don't know exactly what's out there besides what their parents do, and that is it. It's like they don't know anything beyond their 10-mile radius. So I really want to institute, and I started piloting this quarter, a job shadowing program. So this is basically going to go in conjunction with the counseling standards where they're doing the individual plans of study. So my students have already gone ahead and taken the career interest. They're looking at their skills. And then from there, I went ahead and had them research. So I was like, okay, so here's some of the careers that came up from your list. Let's go ahead and research a few of those that you're interested in. So they did all the research on it. Like, oh, how much do you make? What does it take to get there? What does a day-to-day look like? And, you know, everything that they would probably want to know before they actually went and shadowed somebody. So from there, I was like, okay, now I need you to reflect from it. So can you please reflect and tell me, okay, out of these 3 jobs that you researched, which one would you really want to go see? And so I got to meet with the leader, Olathe Leadership Olathe, sorry, and kind of put a plug in with them. And so I got some cards, and I'm like, all right, let's get these connections going. And so I've been making phone calls for the past couple of weeks, trying to get these guys to go next week on these job shadowing for 2 hours. And before we go next week, man, we're gonna be hitting hard on the soft skills. All right, this is how you do a handshake. This is how you look eye in eye. Hey, what questions are you gonna ask when you get there? And keep that phone in your pocket, right? So we're gonna talk about some of those things. And I'm hoping from this, I see it as a win-win no matter what. If a kid goes and hates it, sweet. But now we know we don't have to go down that avenue anymore. And if a kid loves it, sweet. Let's go explore it some more, because that's our whole mission statement right now, right? And so I'm hoping that this program will open kids' eyes, you know, to the world basically, and then also give them a better idea for when they do get into 8th grade about those 21st century programs as well.
So we keep referencing Exploration Day, and still not ready to share all that with you yet, but I will in just a few seconds. It is something that's happening. It's another pilot that we're doing that does cover all 3 of the pillars that we have going on. So we have the social, emotional, the civic engagement, and the academic. We will be tracking students' points. We're calling it a civic score. We're going to allow students to earn points through activities, community service, volunteering, a variety of things that will give them an opportunity to create a civic score. And then we're going to be monitoring that civic score, and that is one of our lead measures to see if we can't see that civic score increase over time. We are a school of service, and that fits into that very well, allowing them to serve others, allowing, as we've mentioned before, our population doesn't get the opportunity as often as they should to get out there and serve others and give back to the community. And through these exploration days, they're getting some hands-on experiences to give back to the community, and the response has been amazing. So exploration days are long, just regular school days, but they're long classes. We piloted one on the 23rd, and we're piloting our second one on the 9th. We've divided the day into 3 orbits. Each orbit is 2 hours long. We're starting and ending the day in homerooms so we can check in with the kids, make sure they're ready to go, that they understand what's happening. It's a little bit different. Everybody teaches 2 orbits. Every teacher is responsible for leading 2 orbits, and then they get 1 orbit as a planned time, and we're talking about turning that into some professional learning. The librarian has already done that for us. She brought in our Google Classroom team to work with our new teachers during their planned time on the 23rd to help have them some more opportunity to work with Google Classroom and all the tools that are built into that. So choosing your orbits, exploring your interest. The whole point of Exploration Day is to get those kids involved in something that they don't normally do. It's supposed to cover different pillars. Each activity doesn't have to. They have 50 choices that they're signing up for. This is one example. So it's a smaller orbit. The supplies were provided. The 2 teachers that were leading it worked really hard to put this together. One of them is the teacher that works with woodworking and has the tools, and so they've trained the kids on safety, and they're actually building dog houses that are going to be donated to Wayside Waste, and they're working with the ASPCA. We have another group that's building or creating toys to give to Wayside Waste for those animals that have, so they'll have something to play with, some very hands-on kinds of things related to the community. This is the thing I'm most excited about. It lets kids explore what they don't know. We say kids don't know what they don't know. And so we have to put those opportunities out there for them. The teachers, you asked earlier about the veteran teachers and the response to this. This is my 19th year at Santa Fe Trail. I entered teaching back in the 80s, and so I've seen the pendulum swing a lot. And I have been so excited about the response of our staff, both young and old, to some of these changes and their excitement about Exploration Day. I wasn't able to be there because I was in Wichita for KMEA on the 23rd. However, the emails and the tweets that I saw going out said they've never seen kids so engaged. I talked to teachers who said, I was dreading this because I looked at the list of kids who signed up for my class and I know they're trouble. Then they got into the class and they said they've never seen them so engaged because it's a different approach to learning. It's getting into the other side of their brain. It's getting them thinking. It's getting them hands-on. It's exposing them to things that they wouldn't get to do otherwise. So this is one of those 50 examples. This is another one. One of our science teachers created a field trip. They're stopping at 3 places, places that serve Olathe water, the water treatment facilities, the wastewater facilities, and that lets kids know what's happening in our community. Where does the water come from? This is a limited resource, so there's a lesson that happens before that, and then they get hands-on experience going out there and seeing what kind of jobs exist. Do they know that there's such a thing as a water resource engineer? And so it really is an exciting opportunity, and I would invite you to come out on the 9th and just kind of wander the halls and see what a different feel it is and different things that are happening there. We've got a teacher who's doing a class in Arabic. We've got a gardening class. We're doing our RSVP class. There's just a huge variety. Jennifer Bodenmiller's coming out and going to do the Olathe Youth Court presentation for our kids. So we're really going to try to tap into the district and see what we can do to make this a meaningful, powerful day for our kids.
Okay, well, to kind of wrap it up, Pinky just reminded me, she said, make sure to tell them why we do this, do all these things during the day. It's because when we have them, you know, and we really talk about control what we can control, which is from 7:50 to 3:10. So if we offered a lot of these things after school, our attendance would not be great, and before school. Our kids are so active, you know, involved, and we have a lot of kids that they go home and help their parents. They go home and watch siblings. They can't stay after school, so that's why we're really trying to put as much into the school day as we possibly can. So just to kind of finish it up, and then we will of course take any questions. But so the final phase is really to kind of build the rocket and looking at the financial resources that are dedicated. And you kind of already talked about that. And the district has been wonderful to provide resources. And one of the things that Dr. Dane said is make us say no. And I don't think she said no yet, but I'm going to push that a little bit more probably. But they've been great about just providing professional learning and providing subs and allowing some of our teachers to go on professional learning and really saying yes to many of the things that we have to do. So the final phase is financial resources, making sure things are in order, working with human resources and looking at our staffing and our staffing needs. putting a professional development plan, because our professional development plan is changing. You know, this is now the work that we do. It's not BLT here and school redesign here. It has to become something that this is just what we do moving forward. And in fact, you know, as we move forward, I think the term redesign, you know, kind of goes away. This is just the work that we do at Santa Fe Trail. And then we have to kind of complete the final plans, and John had mentioned presenting to KSDE, and we are doing some outreach. I heard you mention about parents. We have a parent night on April 25th. We've had one prior to winter break. We have another one on April 25th, where we're inviting our feeder elementary schools, our parents to come in to kind of see a little bit more about, now here are the plans, and this is what it's this is what we anticipate it looking like. Our goal is to really start piloting or start looking that May will look a lot like what August is going to look like. So our goal is to start hitting the ground running here in May, so that we can just roll right into August and have those plans in place. So thank you very much for having us, and we'll take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Leibel. Question?
Yeah,
Leah?
that's so exciting just to hear all the changes. I've got a question. Did you, when you were thinking about breaking everything and starting over, you know, redesigning it, did you look at the start time for school?
We did.
Yeah. That was off the table.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was on the table or not.
You know, we were basically told 7:50 to 3:10 is our window. Okay. But if you look at what we did kind of change the start time for school, because with the startup, we did actually change the time a little bit, because we got to looking at our data from August to December. Tardies to first hour, we had 1,700 tardies to first hour from August to December. And if you think about those kids coming into first hour and they have a class and they're running late, they've had a rough morning, now that they're coming in, they've missed breakfast, and now that teacher's like, where have you been? I'm frustrated because this is the third day in a row that you've been late. And so that soft start just reduced those tardies. So even if they're a little late, they're coming in for a soft start in the morning. And when the kids come in, we've changed the way that we do that. Kids literally just come into to the building, and when they don't even stop at the office, they come right to us in the Commons. We're like, we're so glad that you're here. Here's your pass. Breakfast is right over there. You know, we know you got your backpack on. You're not supposed to have it, but just go to class. Let's go. You know, have a great day. And they're gone. You know, and so that's really what we try to have worked on. So, no, we haven't changed the start time. We've had some parents ask about it. But we've actually kind of changed it within the format that we have.
That's great.
Start time, one of those parameters we gave them to work within, because of the transportation issues.
I thought it might be messy.
And that we needed to keep it. Couldn't add to the school day, couldn't add to the days of the school year as such, but other than that, dream, and let's see where we go.
I think it's great. And so the soft start and then the wrap up at the end of the day, is the same group that they begin with? It is?
Yeah.
That's great.
It is the same group. It's the kids that we normally have for what we call homeroom. So it's the same kids. I would like to see where we kind of loop with those students. So, you know, you have them at 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. I worked in a school that did something similar, and I had the kids, it was a high school from freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. By the time you have those kids, 3 years, you know them very, very well. So we'd like to consider some looping of those students as well. But you're seeing the same kids in the morning and the same kids in the afternoon.
I think it's brilliant. Brilliant. And Brent, I have one question for Westview. Should I do it now or later? Stay here, SFT.
Okay.
John, the home visits, are you seeing that as for every student, and is it just for this year, or is it something that you have for?
We're starting this year with just giving it as an opportunity for our staff. It's going to have to happen outside of their contract time, so it's going to be a voluntary thing. We're going to do some training so that everybody has similar expectations about what that looks like. We obviously have to find interpreters and things like that. I think school-wide next year, we haven't 100% figured out what that plan's going to be. We would love to visit every family at least once or twice a year, have someone visit that family, whether it's their classroom teacher or their cat pack leader that they're eating breakfast with or somebody like that, but somebody visiting with each family at least once or twice a year. So we don't have a firm plan yet for what that's going to look like, though.
I just love that. For early education, they show home visits are some of the most effective breakthrough methods. So I would love to. Are you able to track data on that specifically?
On the home visits, we're going to track which families we're able to visit and things like that, and obviously then we can correlate it to how students are progressing through their schooling.
Great.
And things.
I'm excited about that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Other questions, comments?
Great job.
Great job, guys. Appreciate the discussion and the presentation. Maybe just a quick question, and John may know this. You'll be coming back to us later in the summer, July or August, with additional information or presentation?
We absolutely can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that would be good as a follow-up after the end of the school year and before we start the next school year.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brett. One last presentation. We have Dr. Dugan talking about safety and security in our buildings, safety and security of our students and staff.
Shall I lead us through some calisthenics or some stretching? You guys have been great, engaged listeners. They're fun. I think any chance we have teachers. I will be very honest and tell you I have lamented on how to open up this presentation tonight. I want to make sure I'm giving due respect to the horrific tragedy in Florida. It is the nightmare for any community and parents and teachers and friends. I had a chance last night late to watch the news, and yesterday students returned to that high school. And it was emotional to watch, and I was feeling horrible, and yet for that staff, for that community, they were sending messages of hopefulness, right? They were sending messages of how they move forward and how they want to continue to have a dialogue. And so in that vein, I'm going to share some assurances with you guys tonight about what we have in place in terms of safety and security in the district. And then I also want to encourage us to continue to engage in this conversation about what we can do more of, what we can do better, what we don't need to attend to, and what we need to attend to more. So I think that's the best way we as a community honor Florida and past school shootings is to be open and transparent in this conversation. We have lots of awesome stuff in place thanks to this community and school board. So I'm going to share that. Then I want to share some agenda items that need further discussion, vetting out, law enforcement involved, and then open to thoughts and questions and ideas you guys have. Again, so I'm going to review current best practices. So everything we've done in the last, at least my experience, 8 years has been based on the research in K-12 public education, safety and security. So again, we're research-based in our efforts here. I was here in January of 2016, and then 2 years prior to that in continuing to keep the board updated on the progress in this area. And then again, as I said, I'm going to end this presentation talking about future recommendations and discussion and how we engage not only the school district but our community in this conversation. We have, for the last number of years, identified 10 areas of best practices. They're listed here, but I'm going to go through them on each slide. These are the nationally recognized best practices in school safety. And what I want to do is go through each of those quickly and talk about our efforts and processes and procedures and initiatives in place in each of these areas. The first one, crime prevention through environmental design, also known as CPTED. I think I just say the CPTED. No one ever says that, actually. And this is about how do you design environmental, like buildings, and do landscaping and things that promote safe schools. And so it's very interesting. We're very lucky in the public schools here that we have personnel on board for whom this is a certification, that their expertise in construction and design and management is focused in these things that keep public schools safe. We're looking at clear vantage points so that you can see from inside to what's going on outside. We're looking at making sure we have gorgeous landscaping that meets city code, but doesn't get in the way, is obstructive to that clear vantage point and vision of what's happening. Staying aware at all times of our surroundings. That includes having fencing or landscaping options that send really clear and defined borders for schools. Okay, so in that area, we've done a really nice job. We continue to go and trim bushes where needed and take down trees and things like that to make sure that we really are following these guidelines. The other category is much larger, so I'm going to go through these. If you have questions, I'm happy to come back to any of these at the end. But let me talk about just best practices in terms of a safe and secure environment and culture, what we do, what we believe in as a district that keeps our kids, our staff, our families safe every day. One, you guys have board policy that lays out a safe schools policy and the way we operate and believe We have a code of student conduct that clearly outlines expectations for student behavior and the consequences and interventions, things we put in place that all of our families and students are very aware of. We have building crisis teams, we have district crisis teams. All our staff, we're visible staff identification. And again, one of the best practices that's been in place in our district for a long time. With community bond support and a vision from the school board and school boards that have passed for a number of years, we have secured entrances and pinch points at all of our schools. We have access control, meaning our doors are locked during the school day, and we have many keyless entry points, right? So we don't have extra keys. You may use a key card to get in various strategically placed keyless entry places. We have a large visitor management system, and a number of years ago, I was here explaining why that was going to be so inconvenient. And we were telling families to go back to their car and find their driver's license. No one blinks about that anymore, right? So we have a visitors management system. You show your ID at door 1, you smile at door 2, and then you get into the office. We have you signing in, you're getting a visitor badge. We recognize you as a visitor. And also our staff have protocols and processes. When you see a visitor, you see someone wandering around, you ask who they are, you make sure they get to the right place. And so that has become our culture in the district, but at some point that wasn't, and we've been able to do that over time. We have, through bond issues, added internal and external cameras that we are looking at, not necessarily live, but we can go back and check those. We can check incidents. They are a deterrent one, and also we can go back and follow up and check on things, and we're watching for patterns, people on the school property when they shouldn't be, people coming indoors if we weren't expecting them to. Those kind of things have been incredibly helpful for us. And as you guys know, as we use school resource officers, I'll come back at the end and talk about them, but they are armed Olathe Police Department officers. We have security guards at our high school, 2 security guards per high school. They are not armed. We do safety drills. We have fire, tornado, and our active shooter protocol drill, which is called ALICE. Fire drills happen every month, and then tornado and ALICE drills happen at a less frequent schedule. We do have an active shooter protocol, and again, we've spent some time talking to you guys about that. I'll bring that discussion back up in terms of maybe a continued conversation about that protocol. In terms of the conversation and culture of safety, we have many related curriculum activities happening throughout a school day. Anti-bullying, our social emotional learning, we couldn't be more excited about it. I just love listening to our 2 redesigned schools, that is a big part. And I will talk more in this presentation. 5 years ago after Sandy Hook, we did a similar presentation in our yearly review. We weren't talking about social emotional learning and mental health. And we as a nation and as a school district here have come a long way to know that is also how we keep ourselves safe as a culture, that we are addressing and meeting kids' needs that way. A lot of suicide prevention, our Safe and Drug-Free Schools initiatives, and we spend a lot of time on digital citizenship, right? As we have more digital and technology in our schools, we have to continue to have curriculum and activities talking about that. We also have a manager of safety and security that serves the entire district. Watchdog programs at the majority of our elementary schools. We still have a couple of middle schools that have some activity for watchdogs. We do have a Safe Schools hotline to the state, and again, this is a huge best practice that says districts must have multiple ways things of concern can be reported. Okay, and so we've really added to these over the year. We have a Safe Schools hotline, which is the state. There's a number, it's on posters, it's in schools. You can go on the website, and people can call a phone number, so it's still a little old-fashioned now. You can actually call a phone number and leave like a message, a voicemail, and sharing your safety concern. We have a district anonymous tip line, which is also a phone line you can call and leave an anonymous message. And then Maggie, obviously beautifully timed tonight, talked about the district app. Again, having an anonymous way to share concerns for people that can then take immediate action is one of the top best practices in school safety and security. So we were thrilled to have that added. It really is another puzzle piece we wanted added to our comprehensive plan. And Mr. Castillo has done an incredible job of continuing to brand this message of the importance of student and staff safety and security. And so he's done a variety of imaging and brands. We're getting ready to push more posters out about the district app. So we have that reporting system going on, and everyone knows about it. Another best practice is how collaborative are you with local law enforcement and your county systems? And you guys have heard me talk about this for a while. I don't know if there's a city or a school district that could have a better partnership in terms of the police departments. And that includes Lenexa and Overland Park and our fire departments. Phone calls every time there's a threat. How can we help? They are immediately responsive. We have great response time. They truly are our partners in this, and they hurt like us when these national incidents happen, and continue to want to meet and problem solve and really stay at the top of this. They have reviewed our individual building crisis plans, our emergency operation plan as a district. They're at the table with us making sure, one, they're accurate, that they represent best practice, and that they're aware of it. Because when we call them, they need to know kind of what our plans are going to be. Access control management has been our most recent addition in terms of taking it to full implementation. So again, all of our schools have that access control piece, right? You got to buzz in at the front door. We watch you kind of full body to make sure that you're looking very safe. You come in the second door. If need be, we got uncomfortable, we could actually lock you in the office with us, which keeps you away from the student body in general. Okay, so it's our way to keep. So we have a very complete, comprehensive, multi-level system of access control. Again, we have those pinch points. The exterior doors of all our schools should always be locked when kids are in school. Okay? You should not be able to go and come in a back door. The only way to get in our schools is to show ID. At high school, students now coming back from an ortho appointment and coming in the back lot at South go to a place where they show their student ID before they get buzzed in. So we've really done a lot to tighten that up. We are not perfect, but we've done a lot with our access control management systems, and we're very thankful for those. Again, the visitor sign-in, the badging, the access control. Our high school management system is brand new and different than our other schools because of the high amount of traffic at those schools from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., right? Different doors, activities. I'm coming from a basketball game. We really wanted the majority of those doors locked at all times, but we also need to have people come in for a basketball game. And so there is an electronic system. We manage both at the district level, but the administration at the high school can lock and unlock doors as they need them. This also allows in a need of a crisis, they can lock down the entire building. Every door can lock, so there is no access from the outside with the push of a keystroke here. And so we've really got probably the most advanced system in our high schools to try and control access and yet still remain invitational and welcoming. We want lots of people. You heard these schools, they want parents engaged. We want people in our schools, but how do we do that in a safe manner? Again, visitor management, again, these are the categories. Lots of these overlap. I think we do these beautiful. I'll talk about something at the end that I think is the next step. It is a system Mr. Allison's aware of. We're in the process of pricing a little bit. It takes us one step further in terms of doing a thorough check on all our visitors that come into our schools. Communication management. So I talked about one of the best practices is to have a way that anyone that has a concern, thinks there's a threat, is worried about something, can let folks know. The next best practice is to have multiple layers of communication, right? There's just not one way we let someone know when we're in crisis. And again, we have those multiple layers, right? So we have telephones in all our classrooms, and our buildings have lots of telephones. We have an email system that everyone has access to. That works well. Lots of our staff, our administrators, are using their cell phones. The district pays a portion of that, so those are always readily and available. And we contact administrators, as you know, 24/7 as there are issues that arise. We have building two-way radios. We also have in that, so they're communicating within the building. You're in one area and you talk to someone the next. You saw a student go out the door, the SRO can go. So that communication's ongoing. Then we also have a district radio. Okay, we use those in crises. They call their drills on them. Rick Castillo has one, a number of us here at the Education Center. The same channel, our safety responders can listen in on those calls too. Okay, so that's our communication with our first responders, our law enforcement, our fire department. One thing I'll also mention that's not on here specifically, any message, anytime dispatch in the county, Johnson County Dispatch, sends any sort of first responder to any of our buildings, we are immediately notified. So I get a message on my cell phone, Rick does, Brent does, Jim does, Mr. Allison does. We get a message that says, we're headed to this building and for reason, I know all sorts of emergency codes now that I never knew before, okay? But it is instant that we're aware there's something going on in the building. The second dispatch sends someone after that 911 call, we're notified. We're incredibly lucky that Johnson County and OPD allow us to have that immediate access to their dispatch calls. So it's amazing. Again, we have our Blackboard platform. We can email families very quickly, and we do often when there's critical incidents. And then obviously the website and the mobile app that Maggie talked about. These are those multiple layers of communication that allow us to get as much communication out as fast as we can and as accurate as we can as well. General staff training and preparedness, there's always room for improvement. Training takes time, training takes consistency. We have to prioritize. We have consistently trained all our staff on crisis protocols and procedures. Again, we hold our buildings accountable for fire, tornado, and Alice. They have to radio call those in. We track those monthly. We know if a school has not done those in a timely fashion, so they're very accountable to those systems. The call-in makes them actually have to practice using their district radio as well. It's how to, in the case of a crisis, you're just calling in your drill, but this is how that works and how to have that handy. We have quarterly crisis management team meetings. Rick Castillo leads them. We have fire and police present at all of those meetings. We do tabletop scenarios, exercises, and we also debrief any critical incident in the district. Again, one of the best practices is to, when you have critical incidents, debrief them. How could we have done it better? How could we do it differently? Did we do it the right way? Do you need more information as an administrator to do this well? And again, we redid our crisis manual. I meant to bring it down. It's done in a friendly way. It's easily grabbable at each of our buildings. We had everything electronic. As great as that is, sometimes someone just needs to grab something. They can quick, at a glance, know the protocol to follow if there's a gas leak in the building. And so those were put in the hands of all our administrators. We do have a district threat assessment team, so we meet with the Olathe Police Department on a regular basis, and then anytime it's needed. And we sit down with, from the major to the sergeant of our SRO unit, and we discuss concerns, threats, kids, situations. We bring to their attention, they bring to our attention, so there's no surprises out in the community. I will say that collaboration has been longstanding and is crucial. I, on my cell phone, can contact about anybody in the police department and do, and he's laughing or smiling back there right now. And at any time, because can you go check this kid? Can you go check on something? Oh, he's going to show you the red book. There you go, brand new. Thank you. So that partnership with law enforcement, I can't overstate the importance for that. And then I mentioned to you that I mentioned in this presentation I haven't done before, the OPD and our mental health partners in the community and what the community is offering in our schools offers us a level of threat assessment, preventative measures to take care of students' mental needs, to make them feel safe, to make them feel better. And again, I can't overstate the importance of that aspect to our district's larger safety and security plan. Again, we have large and uniform procedural frameworks. We have a large emergency operations plan. You're seeing this manual here. We have crisis plans at each building. They get updated regularly. And then we have school resource officers, and this has been an ongoing conversation, a contract you guys review on a yearly basis. Every high school has a full SRO. Each middle school has a half-time SRO, so each SRO shares 2 middle schools, and then also the police department provides SRO services to Prairie Learning Center, which has our special ed program, as well as our SOAR Alternative Learning Center, as well as a number of our other alternative education programs, and that will include Mill Creek Campus, that will be having SRO support on that campus when it opens with full kids come August. So I said last 2 slides, just to give you a timeline here. I wanted to talk about areas that are in place that we have to stay vigilant about and maintain and sustain and improve where needed, because we're not perfect, we're a large system. And sometimes these tragedies force us to go back and relook, although we do that on a fairly regular basis anyway. But we need to make sure that these great access control and visitor management systems we have in place are being used. Without exception, that you're going to have to show your ID, and you're going to have to get buzzed in twice. And I'm going to ask you where you're going. And if I see you in the hallway and you don't have a visitor badge on, I'm going to stop you. And we have to stay vigilant to that. And that's with our students, too. So we have an access control system, but if you still text your buddy ahead of time, and you can sneak in that door really quick before the buzzer goes off, you could potentially get in the back door of one of our buildings, okay? We're getting tighter and tighter on the amount of time before an alarm goes off. It's incredibly loud. And you notice I'm not revealing to you that time, because kids will figure that out and manage to. The fastest they've ever moved was the time they got in that door. So we're continuing to get better at that, to use the systems we have every time. And I think that will continue to make us safe. We are going back. We've heard from many families that want updated education about our active shooter protocol. And I understand that when we first rolled it out, we did lots of community town halls related to it. They were well attended. We're going to go back out and do many of those again. These are reviewed regularly by our staff and students. There is a request that we consider doing a more practice type active shooter drill. We do cognitive training drills where a teacher is visiting with the class. Hey, what could we do here? What would we do here? And we're talking about it. There is some interest in maybe practicing the barricading and reviewing some of that with students. And again, the jury's out on the stress and panic and anxiety that causes students. And research says the cognitive drills are really the most impactful. But our instinct tells us they should practice, because practice makes us better at something. And practice makes us better at the one thing we practiced. It doesn't force us to think through all the options, because a crisis is so fluid. I need them to think of a variety of ways to stay safe, and not just the one way maybe we practice. So we're going to continue dialogue on here to make our community comfortable and also do the safest thing. Using the radios, we have these great radios. We need our buildings continuing to use the radios in these communication systems. Keeping radios charged, that's a big deal. You don't want to find out it's not working. And we've run into that just in some practice situations, so we'll continue to talk about that. One of the things also we want to do is continue to enhance the district website, which looks unbelievable in its new format thanks to the communications department, and have more information for families. Videos about the active shooter protocol, kind of some regular this information so they're feeling more comfortable. I think a perception of safety and understanding of it will help everybody feel better. These are the things where considerations may be needed. So these things aren't in place, but they need good discussion. They need us as a community and you guys as a school board to decide if this is a priority for dollars or not, and if it really is best practice. There's a system called Hall Pass, a fairly inexpensive system until you try to put it in 60 buildings, so it's got a price tag to it. But for a couple $1,000s, there's a Hall Pass system. So when your visitor comes in with their driver's license, the driver's license gets scanned and there's an immediate background check done, right? So we are aware of who's in our building. It then prints out a badge that has their picture on it, and it lets you know where in the building they're headed. So they can't wander off. If they're going to first grade for the Valentine's party, that's where they should be. Okay, it's probably the state of the art in terms of that visitor management, the one level we probably haven't put in place yet. It also has some other features in terms of tracking attendance. We could track staff attendance on professional development days. So we have many reasons to do it, but obviously the safety and security would be paramount. There is a community and national conversation about metal detectors. We should have that conversation. Do we need some that travel? Should it be random, like car sniffs from the canine unit? Should it always be there? If it's always there, somebody has to man it, and someone has to man it that's probably armed. So then we're talking, so we have to have that conversation. There's pros and cons. I would tell you research-wise it's divisive in terms of its effectiveness. Does it give a false sense of security? And if you're waiting for 2,000 kids to come through metal detectors, that's 2,000 kids that are kind of sitting ducks, and you have another safety issue. So we need to have that conversation, absolutely will. Adding more SRO to our buildings. Again, the community's asking the questions. We have the conversation every year. We'll continue to have that and engage you guys in those conversations. Two more pieces that we think deserve additional conversation. Should we be real-time monitoring the surveillance system? Should we be paying a staff person that is watching our cameras at our high schools, watching what's going on, catching things that maybe our staff aren't? Happens some places, doesn't happen most. right? We have systems, we use them a lot, we can go back, but we are not sitting in front of doing kind of that real-time wall full of TVs monitoring. So it's a discussion worth having. It comes with some pros and cons as well. And the last thing, and I think we can go in this direction, and we want to for some general professional development in the district, we need kind of an electronic crisis management training platform that all teachers get a message and they're required to do these following trainings. There's a short video, maybe an assessment, and the system is more automated. There's some things we need to do face-to-face. I still think active shooter is a face-to-face training, but bloodborne pathogens, some of our other trainings, the fire drill protocol, some of those we could just have an electronic video system. We know every teacher's done it. We have an accountability system. So I know that platform's out there. We could use it for some general good PD anyway, and so that's one of our ongoing discussion items. That was fast.
Questions?
With that, I take any questions.
I didn't have a question as much as a comment. Just as we get together for our legislative committee, I wonder if that's something that we need to talk about in the future, is adding bullet points about safety, what we'd like to see at the state level, federal level, going forward. So just a note for the legislative committee. I think that's worth having that discussion.
Yeah.
Well, that was mentioned also in public comments this evening here too. You know, what can we do as a public and patrons of this community as far as legislation, and at least talking to, and I'd encourage us to talk to our folks in Topeka, but yes, as our group gets together, we need to have those conversations. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, I think it'd be great to get input from those heading up the efforts in the district too on that.
You know, my comment, and you talk a lot about communication and conversation. Do our teachers and staff, they feel safe in our schools? I'm asking that as a question.
It's a great question. So we survey every year in our staff survey, and we survey our parents. Does your child feel safe at school? And we survey teachers. Do you feel safe at school? And we have overwhelming high rates. Anecdotally, Mr. Allison had a chance to meet with our 25 high school students. The Superintendent Student Advisory Council overwhelmingly said they feel safe. They know what the ALIS protocol is. They'd like to do it a little more often, maybe. That kind of thing. So we're getting that feedback in general. We've always had an overwhelming sense that they feel safe at school. Remember, the other question we ask students a lot that is also best practice is there an adult at school that's safe for you to talk to? And we get great feedback on that as well. It's those number one kind of protective factors. Is there someone you can go talk to that makes you feel safe? In terms of legislative platforms, I made some great notes, and I appreciate your question, and we can get you some more information about that. I will make kind of one final comment and then take more questions if you have them. But staff that are trained in taking care of kids in terms of counselors and mental health, I mean, that investment keeps safe schools. It is people paying attention, people taking care of kids early, people teaching our SEL curriculum. The infrastructure things are amazing, and I imagine this community will continue to support those efforts. Where it gets more difficult and where we have legislative is again, no surprise, kind of our public school funding systems. How do we get social workers that serve all kids and not just kids in special education? School psychologists doing, our community's been amazing with our mental health therapists, but we need 3 times as many of those folks to get at this from a preventative standpoint versus a reactive standpoint. And so I'll try and pull some of those and get those to Mr. Allison to send to you guys as well.
Good.
Just a couple of comments. After meeting with our high school advisory group this week, that this was our topic. They did feel safe. I think tragically, what also came out of that conversation is for them, this is the norm. That they have grown up repeatedly with these types of conversations around school shootings. Kansas has had one school shooting, and that was 30 years ago at Goddard Junior High, in which a student came in with a semi-automatic rifle and a handgun. The target was the principal, and the principal was killed, and there were a couple other folks wounded. But that is the only case, and that was 30 years ago in Kansas. But as the students talked about this sadly being their norm, they also articulated that the social media component of this shooting was different in that you had, through Twitter and Snapchat, pieces of really what was going on at the time from the students themselves. And we had quite a bit of conversation around that. They felt like this time around, the narrative has changed because of that. And they were also more vocal about things have to change. To the question Ms. Neely asked about legislation at this point in time, to my knowledge, there has been nothing specifically addressing school safety either at the state or federal level that's at a point, particularly at the state level, moving forward at this point in time. The state of Kansas has hit their turnaround time, which means that unless a bill was already in a non-exempt committee, it's a dead bill. It can't move forward now through the rest of the session. There was nothing really focused on schools. There were some around guns. And just as a piece of history, prior to 2015, Kansas was an open carry state. You could carry, say, a handgun on your hip as long as it was visible. If you wanted to conceal it, you had to have a permit and you had to have completed a training program. In 2015, Kansas became a concealed carry that requires no permit and no training, as long as you were 21 years of age. In the House, the bill did pass. It was about 76 to 44, 45, somewhere in that range. There was a bill that has not yet had a vote on the Senate floor around reciprocity. The problem was anybody could carry conceal in Kansas, but that didn't work in other states unless you had a permit. So they've reinstated, yes, you can get a permit and training, and the state will issue that permit so that you'd be able to carry concealed in states that have the reciprocity. As part of that discussion and an amendment that passed, the age to conceal was lowered from 21 to 18. So instead of going back up, we rolled it back. But there was a positive amendment in that starting last year in Kansas, it was permissible to conceal and carry on university campuses. And there was an amendment that said somebody should have to have at least firearm safety training before they can carry on a university campus. That amendment also passed as part of that bill, but it's sitting and who knows where it'll move forward. That's about as close as I'm aware of any of the legislation right now in the state of Kansas. I would anticipate if there is something, there have been some proposals about bump stocks and some other things, but they haven't gone to any of the exempt committees, and at this point in time, I'm not aware of anything else.
Any additional comments for questions for Dr. Dugan?
I was going to make one quick comment. I went to 3 schools today. I checked my ID on every one of them, including Miss Debbie at ONW who said, "Hello, Mr. Gary, can I see your ID?" So that was good. But I'd also question at the high school level, in the mornings, for instance, I know we have a lot of kids at the schools. They go in a lot of different doors. Has there been discussion related to kind of channeling that a little different? Because I think in Florida, the kid kind of tried to, after the fact, blended in with the rest of the students and just, I know we do a good job of identifying people during the school day, but just like before, as we get to school, how we keep people managed?
So I'll talk high school specifically, but there is a certain portion of the day where our schools are open just to get 2,000 kids inside. We have over time, so Northwest as an example, used to have 35 of its doors open. We've got that down to half of that now that are open and they're set. And then they're set to close and lock down, and you have to go through. This is where it's about people and it's staff on supervision, and they're in hallways the entire time of student arrival. And that's the best we have. We've got videos at all our entrances, so we know who's come in. We can go back and later check some of that. But there is a vulnerable time when about half of our doors are open to get all those kids from those parking lots in a timely way. Same is true for all our schools. Again, at elementary, it's we're not going in lots of doors, and same for middle school. There may be one or two. Our high school is just given the large number of students. And, you know, they don't always arrive incredibly early to get to class. They like to kind of get there as close to the 8 o'clock hour as possible. So we've done some work, but that can certainly be, we've had some questions about how do you keep kids safe at arrival and dismissal when you're more open.
Good.
So I appreciate this presentation. I just wanted to ask something. Have we ever considered not doing backpacks?
So we haven't. And so it can be something on a discussion list. It's still school. We need pens and notebooks and textbooks.
And they don't use their lockers.
And a lunch.
Yeah.
They don't use lockers.
Or coats.
And we need coats. And yeah, they don't take coats. They don't come to school early and they don't wear coats. So you know, it can be a conversation. But they're going to have to bring their stuff. It'd be like telling me to come to work without my work bag. Right. So this is that fine balance between welcoming, invitational, and being a school, and becoming a fortress. But they're worthy conversations. So nothing's eliminated, but we need to talk about it and then be realistic about what kids need for tools at school.
Well, I think there is a different tone. You would have thought Sandy Hook would have done it, but the tipping point seems to be now, and I think it's the age of the students. You know, they have their own voices now. So I think we as a community need to consider having a community conversation. I've had more phone calls from parents that are concerned and asking questions. I know Officer Bell is here from Olathe South, and you know, I cannot imagine him not running in to help. And the parents have asked, how do you know that our school resource officers wouldn't hide outside? You know, we don't know the whole story of what happened in Florida, but I think just having those more detailed conversations with our parents, maybe having, you know, just an open house to talk at some point about the ideas, you know, that they're sharing would be a great idea. And then if there's a parent, I have two that were going to be here tonight that want to know how they can help with school safety. What should we tell them?
So I'm encouraging folks, if they can call myself or Mr. Castillo and share thoughts, and we're tracking all of these, and also how they can help. As you can imagine, we've heard from huge numbers of vendors, right? And we've heard from huge numbers of really afraid moms and dads. You know, so we're trying to balance this, but we're taking all of those calls, or returning all of those calls. We're trying to not send them an email, but give them a call back and do that reassuring piece. There have been golden nuggets of information in all those calls. And so we kind of want to hear that. How others can help, I mean, I think is part of the next conversation. I think watchdogs can be revisited. Yeah. I think watchdogs at all our schools, and having more people just checking the perimeter of a school on a regular basis makes some sense to me, like more eyes. Can't hurt. So I think that can be part of a larger conversation, for sure. And we are planning to get back out. It's how we do that, and do that well, and get information out. So we'll be talking about that as a senior leadership team in terms of probably not town halls, but smaller little hut halls, something so we can actually get to the people and have good conversation, and kind of stay on point.
Two other things our students told us, and it goes earlier to Ms. Kolb's presentation, is making students more aware of the app and the ability for the tip line. And then they felt that we need to revisit not only maybe talking the ALICE protocols once a quarter in their advisory period. They felt like you could talk about it too much, but that revisiting that periodically during a school year. And the other was to remind our community, if you see something, say something. Mm-hmm. And that is our best line of defense, so to speak, is people being aware on social media and those others, and not thinking, oh, that comment is just flippant, that if you see something and it's a concern, then you report it so that the appropriate authorities can check that out. So I thought those were some really good suggestions by our high school students, and we're definitely going to move forward with those.
Thank you, Dr. Dugan. Appreciate that. You know, at this point, we're going to take a 10-minute comfort break. We're going to adjourn and come back at 8:25. You've all been very patient,
Yeah.
but we will stop and have a comfort break. Quick one. A lot of great presentations. Thank you all for sticking around and being a part of that. We now have our action items and our consent agenda. If anybody had any questions or wanted to talk about anything, if not, I'd look for a motion to approve.
I'd move to approve consent agenda items numbered 5.01 to 5.14 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Wycliffe and a second by Mr. Scheer. Joy?
Mrs. Felter?
Yes.
Mr. Geary?
Yes.
Mr. Wycliffe?
Yes.
Mr. Scheer?
Yes.
Mr. Beveridge?
Yes.
Mr. McCune?
Yes. And actions, items for bids, contracts, and agreements. Several there. Didn't know if anyone of the board members would like to talk or pull one. If not, I would look for a motion.
I move to accept all the action bid and contract agreements, 6.01, 6.06 is read.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Scheer and a second by Mr. Geary. Joy?
Mr. McCune?
Yes.
Mrs. Felter?
Yes.
Mr. Geary?
Yes.
Mr. Wycliffe?
Yes.
Mr. Scheer?
Yes.
Mr. Beveridge?
Yes.
And action items other, 7.01 and 7.02. Budget developmental goals, also student fees, miscellaneous charges. Anybody have any?
I just had one quick question
Yes.
about the
Good.
student, or actually the facility rentals. Do we periodically look at what like the private cost would be to rent a gym and compare that to what we're charging, or how often do we do that? What's that process look like?
We do a comparison with other districts in the area. That's kind of our main competition. Do we look much at the private? No.
What we do?
We don't look at private gyms.
Okay.
We would look at Shawnee Mission, Blue Valley, all the neighboring Johnson County districts, and compare what their rental fees are. We all kind of are in about the same spot right now. That's what the recommended adjustments are, is to bring us kind of in that same realm.
The match up.
Mhm.
Okay.
While you're there, John, can I ask you about the budget development goals?
Sure, certainly.
Specifically, this number 6, it says identify strategies to achieve 6% capital outlay reserves, 10% contingency fund reserve, and 60 days operating/dependent fund cash reserve. And so right now, don't we have like 17 days on average operating cash?
On average.
So wow, I'm thrilled to see this. Is it attainable?
It's definitely a stretch goal, but it's my obstinance that this is the best practices in finance on where our reserve should be. So I just don't feel we should give on the goal. Some of them will be easier to achieve. It'll take a very long time for capital outlay, but over time we can build that and help provide repairs to our buildings. The operating cash will always be a struggle. Because you want to invest that in the classrooms, and we simply just don't have revenue flow. So hopefully in my career we'll get it closer.
So we have maybe 6% on average, and it's technically right now in the contingency fund reserve, or is
that's
it?
Correct. We have in the contingency and in the special ed.
Okay.
That's two places where it's at.
And that's because of the end of year transfer.
Correct.
Okay. So to me, this is good business practice, and it's planning for the future. And yet you always hear, and there's always articles about all the cash reserves. I hear in my mind buckets of money, as if we're hoarding money, And so I would say if you would help us continually be able to, before our constituents, explain the why behind this, it really is good practice. And
Correct.
So I was excited to see it.
As we go through the budget work, I always demonstrate on a slide exactly at year end, it looks like we have $100 million in the bank and why you can't touch any of it, and it's just a timing issue. When we speak to operating budgets, they have to be spent out at year end, and you only really have two places, special ed and contingency reserve, that you can hold on to it. It's all about the timing of the year. When will you, sometimes we'll have 47 days cash right after the taxes roll in January, and you know what it looks like in May and what it looks like in December. It'll be -2.
Yeah, yeah. So it's all about the timing.
Absolutely.
I know when I first got on the board in 2011, that the year prior there had been late payments from the state,
Correct.
and so that's what this is for, to be able, we don't have to do furloughs or, panic our employees. To me, it's a stability factor. So I was very excited to see that.
And as far as the capital outlay goes, it's not that we're going to just keep a levy at 8 mils in order to build a balance. Our balance grows is you sell a North Lindenwood Service Center. Suddenly you have an influx, and we hope to protect that and save that for a rainy day.
That's great. Thank you.
I was just going to mention too, a lot of times when they have that big lump sum that school districts have, they include bond money too, correct?
And you need to, depending on the timing, we could have 3 bond payments in the bank. It's just the rules, and that is we pay about $30 million in a payment. So you can suddenly have $100 million, depending on what day you ask me for the balances.
Those balances are critical for our cash flow, just like any business. Special ed, I would point out, is another one that the way in which we receive our reimbursements, which are also below state statute, almost to the tune of $19 million a year that we're spending out of general fund to make up that difference. But when we get paid is not necessarily every month. You look at special ed, you look at transportation, you look at some of those others that are included in our monthly payment. So we have to have the reserves to be able to cash flow during the times. Special ed's an example. First payment would be October. So you think about all the extended school year activities we have by IEP requirements for those students. We have to cover all those costs from the end of school through the summer and into the beginning of school before we receive our special ed reimbursement. So you've got to have the ability in some of those funds to have the reserves just to be able to make our payments in cash flow as we would need.
Hey, John, real quick on the facility fees.
Yes.
On the bigger stuff, is that all like net 30, or are we? I mean, we get payment pretty quick on most of that stuff. On the
We
real
get
big
payment
stuff,
fairly
or-
quick. Technically, we're net 30, but we get it fairly quickly. Quicker than we pay. As we have cycled, ours is really a 45-day because of board meetings. We always have to caution our vendors that if you don't send your invoice in the right timing, you can be 45 to 60 days.
Okay. Thank you, John. I'd look for a motion.
Move to approve items 7.01 and 7.02 as presented.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Wycliffe and a second by Ms. Felter. Joy.
Mrs. Felter?
Yes.
Mr. Gary?
Yes.
Mr. Wycliffe?
Yes.
Mr. Shear?
Yes.
Mr. Beveridge?
Yes.
Mr. McCune?
Yes. Future action items. Any comments or looks like a lot of student trips? Lines on 01, the February Head Start Director's Report. Any board members have any topics for discussion? 10.01. None?
I have one. I know, I hope I'm not stealing anything from you though, John. The Johnson County valuations went out, and our properties are all worth a lot more. That's a good thing. But I have heard from some of the retirees that have fixed incomes, or the young folks who are trying to establish themselves. And I just want to give some tummy comfort that we aren't tax and spenders up here. Our history is over the decade pretty much flat mill levies until just as last year when we had to increase it a little bit for high school number 5, Olathe West. So we're very sensitive about that, and I just wanted to publicly mention that. And that's it.
Thank you, Leah. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Ellison.
I will, Mr. Hutchinson was able to tentatively confirm today that we'll have Chairman Eilert at our next meeting to talk about, as some folks saw in the paper and we've talked about here recently, the dark store theory or how the assessment is done for your big box stores. So he'll be here to give us an update on where that is in the process and some of the information. A few items. I think you could see the incredible amount of work that our redesigned schools have put in up to this point. And honestly, this may be the easy part in the planning as they move to implementation and to track the success and to get all these moving pieces working and synchronized. It's been incredible to watch their efforts. So I want to commend all of them. And I think it may have been Mr. Leibel that made the comment that this is no longer about redesign. It's about the way we do business in those schools. And that I think that's a significant approach, and as we move through the implementation piece, that's the way they're approaching it. It's not, we're going to try a little this or a little that. It's about changing the fabric of how we want to interact with our students and organize. So again, I commend them on that. I also want to thank the School Service Center and our custodians for all the work they did during our ice issues. I can't wait for warmer weather. That's a decision that it doesn't matter what you do, you're an idiot one way or the other. And you just had to learn to accept that. I do want to point out a couple factors as we, student safety is the reason we make those decisions. Weather is not predictable, particularly when we get around ice. But the way our students get to school, when things occur, are part of that decision. So we have about a third of our students that ride the bus. And I think a lot of folks think snow day calls are just about buses. They're not. We've got about a third of our students that drive themselves, which as a parent is always a concern, even in the best of conditions, and or are driven to school. And that may look very different from school to school. You may have a huge portion that our parent drop off, and we have other schools where that last third, they're walkers. So it's all those conditions that go into play, and ice is more unpredictable. The moisture, the temperature, our crews worked incredibly hard and had to retreat because temperatures would drop and the treatment wouldn't prevent the ice. Sidewalks, crosswalks. So all those factors have to be considered when we think about snow days, and it really takes a team to get the messages out. And I just want to thank our crews that were out on the streets as well as everyone, Dr. Dugan and Maggie and Cody and all, because it takes quite a bit. Once that, I get the easy part, make the decision, and they have to make it happen after that. So I do want to thank them. There's a bill next week that I will be testifying on. It's House Bill 2561 regarding transportation. This has been another topic for the last several decades, the way in which districts were reimbursed for some, and I think that's a really key word, some of our transportation costs. The state does not cover all of a district's transportation costs. So that's money out of general fund that we have to allocate toward getting our students to school. Does not align exactly to statute, though direction was given to make that change. So there's a bill that would correct that and adjust the statute so that the way in which we received our funding would be corrected statutorily. The change that was made a couple decades ago, they discovered that the transportation formula worked against high-density school districts. So if you're an urban or suburban school district, it really, you were at a disadvantage. And there was direction given to adjust kind of a line of best fit to make sure that the legislative intent was what was followed. It's been controversial, and I'm sure there will be a lot of interesting testimony next week. But I did want to make you aware that as we've discussed and would align to our legislative agenda, that I will testify in favor of that bill so that we get the statute to match the practice and the way we budget. The difference would be around $800,000 to our budget if we don't realign the statute to practice. And that concludes my comments.
Okay. Executive session. I believe we're going to need about 30 minutes. So is that you, Mr. Beveridge?
Yeah. Everyone's staring at me. I move that the board adjourn to executive session for the purpose of discussing employee performance and personnel changes pursuant to non-elected personnel exemptions under HOMA, and that the board return to the regular meeting at 9:10. That 9:10 p.m. in this room.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Beveridge and a second by Ms. Felter. George?
And just because I went to a workshop last week and they told us this had to be word for word, it's exception, not exemption.
Oh, did I read that wrong?
That's okay. I'm just
Okay.
letting you know. That's what they told us.
Since I have to read it every time,
I'm trying to make it less wordy. Mr. Beveridge?
Yes.
Mr. McCune?
Yes.
Mrs. Felter?
Yes.
Mr. Begary?
Yes.
Mr. Whitcliffe?
Yes.
And Mr. Scheer?
Yes.